Welcome, friend, to this peaceful journey through one of history's most transformative periods. Tonight, we're traveling back over 2,000 years to witness the rise of a dynasty that would forever change the face of civilization. Whether you're settling in for the night or simply seeking a moment of calm, I'm grateful you're here with me as we explore the remarkable story of the Qin dynasty and the birth of Imperial China. Close your eyes and imagine walking through the dusty streets of ancient China in the year 259 BCE. The air carries the scent of burning incense from nearby temples, mixed with the earthy smell of rice paddies and the distant clang of bronze being forged into weapons. This is a world of warring states, where 7 powerful kingdoms have been locked in brutal conflict for centuries, each dreaming of unifying all under heaven. In the western state of Qin, in a modest palace chamber, a child takes his first breath. The midwives whisper prayers to the ancestors as they wrap the infant in silk, unaware that this baby will one day become the first emperor of a unified China. His name is Ying, though history will remember him by another title entirely. The palace where young Zheng grows up is a world of rigid ceremony and constant danger. Each morning begins before dawn, with the sound of bronze bells echoing through corridors lined with painted wooden columns. Servants in hemp robes shuffle silently across polished stone floors, carrying steaming bowls of millet porridge and dried fish to the royal quarters. The boy learns early that every meal, every conversation, every moment of his day is governed by ancient rituals that stretch back generations. Picture the young prince in his study chamber, surrounded by bamboo scrolls covered in elegant brushstrokes. His tutor, an elderly scholar with a wispy beard, guides his small hand as he practices writing characters with a brush dipped in black ink. The characters flow like water across the bamboo surface, each stroke deliberate and meaningful. Outside the window, cherry blossoms drift past like snow, but the child's attention remains fixed on his lessons about statecraft and military strategy. The Qin kingdom itself is a harsh but prosperous land. Farmers wake each morning to work terraced fields carved into mountainsides, their backs bent under the weight of heavy wooden plows pulled by water buffalo. The rice paddies reflect the sky like mirrors, disturbed only by the gentle movements of workers transplanting seedlings by hand. In the distance, the smoke from iron foundries rises into the morning mist, where craftsmen forge the superior weapons and tools that give Qin its military advantage. Young Zheng's daily routine shapes him into the leader he will become. After his morning studies, he joins other noble children in the palace courtyard for martial training. The sound of wooden practice swords clacking together fills the air as boys no older than 10 learn the art of war. Their instructor, a grizzled veteran with scars across his forearms, shouts commands that echo off the palace walls. Sweat drips from the children's faces as they practice formations that mirror the armies fighting across the kingdom's borders. The palace kitchens bustle with activity as servants prepare the elaborate meals that punctuate the royal day. Steam rises from enormous bronze cauldrons where rice cooks, alongside preserved vegetables and strips of salted meat. The head cook, a woman whose hands are permanently stained with spices, tastes each dish with the gravity of someone whose mistakes could mean death. She knows that poison is always a possibility in the dangerous world of palace politics. As afternoon arrives, young Zheng often finds himself in the palace gardens, walking among carefully manicured pine trees and listening to the gentle trickle of water over stone. These moments of tranquility are rare in his regimented existence. The garden represents the harmony and order that Chinese philosophy prizes above all else, with every rock and plant positioned according to ancient principles of balance and beauty. The evenings bring different lessons as the prince sits with his advisors, learning about the complex web of alliances and betrayals that define the warring states period. Maps spread across low wooden tables show the territories of rival kingdoms, their boundaries shifting like sand dunes as armies advance and retreat. Coloured tokens representing different forces move across the map as military strategists explain the delicate balance of power that keeps all 7 states locked in perpetual conflict. The Qin state itself operates like a vast machine designed for war and efficiency. Every citizen has a role to play in the kingdom's military ambitions. Farmers not only grow food but also serve as soldiers when called upon. Craftsmen forge weapons and armor between creating tools and household items. Merchants transport supplies along dangerous mountain roads, always watching for bandits and enemy raiders. In the capital city, the streets come alive each morning as vendors set up their stalls in the marketplace. The air fills with the calls of merchants advertising their wares, from bolts of silk to jars of fermented fish sauce. Children dart between the stalls, their laughter mixing with the sounds of bargaining customers and the rhythmic pounding of metalworkers shaping bronze and iron. The smell of cooking food drifts from countless small restaurants, where travelers and locals gather to share meals and exchange news from distant provinces. The temples scattered throughout the city provide spiritual anchor points in a world of constant uncertainty. Worshippers burn incense sticks that fill the air with sweet smoke as they pray to ancestors and deities for protection and prosperity. The rhythmic chanting of priests creates a peaceful counterpoint to the bustling activity of daily life. These sacred spaces offer brief respites where people can contemplate the deeper meanings of existence beyond the immediate concerns of survival and advancement. As night falls across the kingdom, oil lamps flicker to life in windows throughout the capital. Families gather around low tables for their evening meals, sharing rice and vegetables while discussing the day's events. Children listen wide-eyed to stories told by their grandparents, tales of heroes and dragons that have been passed down through countless generations. The soft glow of lamplight creates intimate circles of warmth in the gathering darkness. In the palace, young Zheng prepares for sleep in chambers guarded by loyal soldiers. His bed, raised on a wooden platform and surrounded by silk curtains, sits in the center of a room decorated with painted screens depicting scenes from ancient legends. The prince's dreams are filled with visions of conquest and glory, shaped by the constant lessons about leadership and power that fill his waking hours. The kingdom's military camps present a different picture of daily life, where thousands of soldiers live in disciplined communities dedicated to the art of war. Each morning begins with the sound of drums calling troops to formation. Men in bronze armor practice with spears and crossbows, their movements precise and coordinated after years of training. The camps smell of leather, metal, and sweat, mixed with smoke from cooking fires, where simple meals of millet and dried meat sustain the fighting forces. The administrative centers of Qin reveal another aspect of the kingdom's character. Scribes work by candlelight, copying official documents onto bamboo strips that will be bound together with silk cords. Every aspect of government is recorded and tracked, from tax collections to military appointments. The sound of brushes scratching against bamboo creates a constant whisper throughout the bureaucratic halls where the kingdom's business is conducted with methodical precision. Trade routes threading through mountain passes connect Qin to distant kingdoms, carrying goods and information that help shape the young prince's understanding of the wider world. Merchants travel in armed caravans, their pack animals loaded with precious cargo that might include jade carvings, bronze mirrors, or rare spices from far-off lands. These traders bring news of political developments, military movements, and technological innovations that could affect the balance of power between the warring states. The religious and philosophical traditions that guide daily life in Qin blend ancient ancestor worship with newer schools of thought about governance and ethics. Temple ceremonies mark the changing seasons and important events in the royal calendar. Philosophers debate questions about the proper relationship between rulers and subjects the nature of virtue, and the best methods for maintaining social harmony. These discussions take place in scholarly academies, where learned men gather to exchange ideas and compete in intellectual tournaments. Young Jung absorbs all these influences as he grows from child to teenager, his character shaped by the unique combination of military discipline, scholarly education, and political intrigue that defines life in the Qin court. His tutors recognize his exceptional intelligence and ruthless determination, qualities that will prove essential as he prepares to inherit leadership of a kingdom locked in desperate struggle with its neighbors. The daily rhythms of palace life continue to revolve around the careful observance of ritual and protocol that governs every aspect of royal existence. Morning audiences with officials, afternoon military briefings, evening study sessions, and formal state dinners all follow patterns established by generations of previous rulers. Yet beneath this surface of traditional ceremony, the young prince is already beginning to envision changes that will transform not just his own kingdom, but the entire known world. The workshops scattered throughout the capital city hum with activity as skilled artisans perfect the crafts that make Qin's economy thrive. In dimly lit bronze foundries, master craftsmen tend glowing furnaces that reach temperatures hot enough to melt metal into liquid fire. The rhythmic hammering of apprentices shapes cooling bronze into intricate ritual vessels, their surfaces decorated with swirling patterns that tell stories of ancient dragons and mythical beasts. Sparks fly through the smoky air as workers quench red-hot metal in wooden tubs filled with water, creating clouds of steam that drift toward the ceiling. The textile workshops present a quieter but equally industrious scene. Women sit at wooden looms, their fingers moving with practiced precision as they weave silk threads into fabric that shimmers like captured sunlight. The gentle clacking of the looms creates a soothing rhythm that continues from dawn until dusk. Young girls learn the trade by watching their mothers and grandmothers, gradually mastering the complex patterns that distinguish Qin textiles from those produced in rival kingdoms. In the palace armory, weaponsmiths forge the superior iron weapons that give Qin armies their deadly advantage over enemies still relying on bronze. The air rings with the sound of hammers striking anvils as master smiths shape glowing metal into sword blades that will cut through traditional armor like silk. These craftsmen guard their techniques jealously, knowing that their innovations in metallurgy represent crucial military secrets that could determine the outcome of entire campaigns. The agricultural villages surrounding the capital follow seasonal rhythms that have governed rural life for countless generations. Farmers rise before dawn to tend their crops, walking through morning mist that clings to the rice paddies like ghostly veils. Water buffalo wade through flooded fields, their massive forms casting rippled reflections as they pull wooden plows through the soft earth. The farmers sing traditional work songs that help coordinate their movements and make the long hours of labor more bearable. During harvest season, entire communities work together to gather the grain that will sustain the kingdom through the coming year. Children run between the workers carrying water in clay jugs, their laughter mixing with the swish of scythes cutting through ripe stalks. Granaries fill with golden rice that represents not just food, but also the economic foundation that allows Qin to maintain its large armies and elaborate bureaucracy. The mountain passes that protect Qin's borders present a different world entirely, where fortress garrisons maintain constant vigilance against enemy infiltrators and raiders. Soldiers patrol narrow pathways carved into cliff faces, their bronze armor clanking softly as they navigate treacherous terrain. Signal fires burn on distant peaks, ready to carry warnings of approaching enemies across hundreds of miles in mere hours. These remote outposts survive on supplies carried by sure-footed mountain ponies that can traverse paths too dangerous for larger animals. As young Zheng enters his teenage years, his education intensifies to prepare him for the responsibilities that await. His mornings now begin with military strategy sessions, where veteran generals explain the principles of warfare using detailed models of battlefields. Wooden figures representing different types of troops move across sand tables, as commanders demonstrate flanking maneuvers, siege tactics, and the coordination required to manage armies numbering in the tens of thousands. The prince's afternoons are devoted to studying the administrative systems that keep his kingdom functioning efficiently. He learns how taxes are collected, how laws are enforced, and how information flows from remote provinces to the central government. Scrolls covered with population records, production reports, and military assessments pile high on his study table as he grasps the immense complexity of governing even a single kingdom, let alone the unified empire he dreams of creating. Philosophy lessons occupy his evenings, where learned scholars debate the nature of effective leadership and the proper relationship between rulers and their subjects. The prince listens intently to discussions about legalism, a school of thought that emphasizes strict laws, harsh punishments, and absolute authority as the keys to maintaining order in society. These ideas resonate with his growing understanding that unifying China will require unprecedented levels of organization and control. The royal hunts that punctuate the prince's education provide practical training in leadership and military tactics. Mounted on horseback and accompanied by skilled archers, young Zheng learns to coordinate complex operations involving hundreds of participants. The thundering of hooves across open grasslands mingles with the baying of hunting dogs and the calls of beaters driving game toward waiting spearmen. These expeditions teach lessons about timing, communication, and decision-making that will prove invaluable in future military campaigns. The court ceremonies that mark important occasions in the royal calendar become increasingly elaborate as Zheng approaches adulthood. The hall of audiences fills with officials wearing silk robes in colors that indicate their rank and function within the government hierarchy. Musicians playing bronze bells and stone chimes create haunting melodies that echo through the vast chamber as dignitaries perform the complex bowing rituals that demonstrate their loyalty to the throne. During these formal occasions, tribute bearers from conquered territories present gifts that showcase the growing power of the Qin state. Jade carvings, rare woods, exotic animals, and precious metals accumulate in the royal treasury as symbols of submission from peoples who have learned to fear Qin's military might. Each offering represents not just wealth, but also recognition of political dominance that extends the kingdom's influence far beyond its original borders. The intelligence networks that keep Qin's leadership informed about developments in rival kingdoms operate through a web of merchants, travelers, and diplomatic envoys who report back on everything from troop movements to harvest failures. In secure chambers beneath the palace, spy master officials analyze reports that arrive by swift messenger horses from agents scattered across the known world. Maps covered with pins and colored strings track the constantly shifting alliances and betrayals that characterize relationships between the warring states. Young Zheng begins to participate in these intelligence briefings, learning to interpret the subtle signs that might indicate an enemy's intentions or reveal opportunities for Qin to exploit weaknesses in rival kingdoms. The prince demonstrates a natural talent for strategic thinking that impresses even the most experienced advisors. His questions reveal a mind that can grasp complex political relationships and anticipate the long-term consequences of immediate tactical decisions. The diplomatic missions that travel between kingdoms carry messages whose true meanings are often hidden beneath layers of ceremonial politeness and traditional courtesy. Ambassadors, skilled in the arts of negotiation and deception, work to forge temporary alliances, gather intelligence, or deliver ultimatums disguised as friendly communications. These envoys return with detailed reports about the military capabilities, economic conditions, and political stability of foreign courts. The prison complexes that house captured enemies and rebellious subjects provide grim testimony to the harsh justice that maintains order within Qin's borders. Guards patrol stone corridors where political prisoners await trials that will determine their fates. The sound of chains echoes through underground chambers where interrogators extract information that might reveal plots against the state or provide intelligence about enemy capabilities. These facilities serve as constant reminders that defiance of royal authority carries severe consequences. The medical colleges, where court physicians study the arts of healing, represent another aspect of Qin's sophisticated civilization. Students learn to diagnose illnesses by observing subtle changes in pulse patterns, skin color, and breathing rhythms. Herb gardens provide the raw materials for medicines that can treat everything from battlefield wounds to mysterious fevers that sweep through crowded cities. These healers guard their knowledge carefully, knowing that their skills might someday determine the fate of the kingdom if called upon to treat injured rulers or commanders. The astronomical observatories perched on palace towers allow scholars to track the movements of celestial bodies that influence important decisions about timing military campaigns and conducting state ceremonies. Star charts covered with intricate calculations help determine auspicious dates for crucial events, while careful observations of comets and eclipses provide omens that might guide policy decisions. These scientific pursuits blend practical knowledge with ancient beliefs about the connection between earthly events and heavenly influences. As Zheng approaches his coming-of-age ceremony, the entire kingdom prepares for the transition that will soon place ultimate power in his hands. Craftsmen work day and night to create the ceremonial objects required for the elaborate rituals that will mark his ascension to full royal authority. The prince himself undergoes intensive preparation that includes memorizing hundreds of traditional responses, mastering the precise movements required for ancient dances, and learning to project the divine authority that legitimizes dynastic rule, astic rule. The coming-of-age ceremony itself unfolds over 3 days of continuous ritual that transforms a prince into a king. In the pre-dawn darkness of the first day, Zheng bathes in water scented with rare herbs, while court musicians play melodies that have accompanied royal transitions for centuries. The ceremonial robes that servants help him don are woven with golden threads that catch the flickering light of oil lamps, each stitch representing prayers for wisdom and strength from his ancestors. The Great Hall fills with dignitaries who have travelled from across the kingdom to witness this historic moment. Incense burners release clouds of fragrant smoke that drift toward painted ceiling beams carved with dragons and phoenixes. The young king-to-be walks slowly across polished stone floors, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber, as hundreds of officials perform synchronized bows that create waves of motion through the assembled crowd. But even as these ancient ceremonies proceed with their timeless dignity, darker currents flow beneath the surface of palace life. In shadowy corridors where servants whisper urgent messages, news arrives of border skirmishes that threaten to explode into full-scale war. Enemy kingdoms have begun testing Qin's defenses, probing for weaknesses they hope to exploit during the vulnerable transition period when old authority gives way to new leadership. The military commanders who attend the coronation ceremonies carry sealed dispatches that detail troop movements along contested frontiers. Between formal audiences and ritual obligations, the new young king must make critical decisions about deploying reinforcements and authorizing counterattacks against enemy provocations. The weight of real responsibility settles on shoulders that have known only the theoretical burdens of anticipated power. In the royal war room, maps spread across massive wooden tables show the complex strategic situation that awaits the new ruler's attention. Colored tokens representing different armies create abstract patterns that reflect life and death struggles playing out across hundreds of miles of contested territory. Intelligence reports arrive hourly, carried by exhausted messengers whose mud-splattered clothes speak of desperate rides through dangerous country to deliver crucial information. The young king's first major decision involves responding to an invasion by the neighboring Han kingdom, whose armies have crossed the disputed border and begun laying siege to a strategically important fortress. Military advisors present conflicting recommendations about whether to negotiate, reinforce the besieged garrison, or launch a massive counter-offensive that could escalate the conflict beyond any previous scale. The fate of thousands of soldiers and civilians hangs in the balance as debates rage through the night. Dawn finds the new ruler standing alone on the palace's highest tower, looking out across his kingdom as he weighs choices that will define his reign. The morning mist that rises from distant valleys obscures the landscape like the uncertainty that clouds all major decisions in this world of constant warfare. Somewhere beyond the horizon, enemy armies advance, while his own forces prepare for battles that could determine the survival of everything his ancestors built. The decision to respond with overwhelming force rather than diplomatic negotiation marks the beginning of a new phase in the endless conflicts that plague the warring states. Orders flow from the capital to military commanders throughout the kingdom, mobilizing armies that dwarf any previous deployment in the region's turbulent history. The sound of war drums echoes across the countryside as soldiers march towards staging areas where the largest military operation in generations will take shape. The logistics required to support such massive armies strain every aspect of the kingdom's infrastructure. Granaries empty as supply trains carry tons of rice and preserved meat toward the frontier. Armories work around the clock to produce the thousands of weapons needed to equip newly recruited soldiers. Roads designed for peaceful commerce now carry endless columns of marching troops whose bronze armor glints in the afternoon sun like scales on some enormous dragon. Village workshops that normally produce farming tools and household items convert to military production as the entire kingdom transforms itself into an engine of war. Blacksmiths who once made plowshares now forge spear points and arrowheads. Carpenters abandon furniture making to construct siege engines and supply wagons. Even children contribute by gathering materials and carrying messages between workshops that operate from before dawn until well after dark. The massive fortress complex that guards Qin's eastern border becomes a hive of activity as reinforcements arrive to strengthen defenses against the anticipated enemy assault. Engineers work to reinforce walls and gates, while archers test their equipment from battlements that offer commanding views of the approaches any attacking force must use. The defenders know that holding this position could determine whether the war remains a border skirmish or expands into a conflict that consumes multiple kingdoms. The enemy siege camp that has formed outside the fortress walls presents its own picture of organized military activity. Thousands of Han soldiers have constructed a temporary city complete with supply depots, command centers, and workshops for maintaining weapons and equipment. Siege towers rise like wooden mountains as engineers prepare the assault weapons that will attempt to breach walls that have never fallen to foreign attack. The diplomatic missions that travel between the warring camps carry proposals for negotiated settlements that neither side seriously expects the other to accept. These formal exchanges serve mainly to buy time while military preparations continue and to maintain the fiction of civilized behavior between kingdoms that are preparing to slaughter each other's armies. The ambassadors who conduct these futile negotiations understand that their real purpose is intelligence gathering rather than peacemaking. Night attacks and counterattacks create a rhythm of violence that prevents either side from resting completely. The darkness fills with the sounds of clashing metal and shouted commands as small units probe enemy positions and attempt to disrupt supply lines. Fires bloom suddenly in the blackness, where raiding parties strike vulnerable targets before melting back into the shadows that provide their only protection against superior numbers. The field hospitals that treat wounded soldiers from both sides reveal the human cost of these escalating conflicts. Physicians work by torchlight to treat injuries that range from minor cuts to devastating wounds that will leave survivors permanently disabled. The groans of wounded men mingle with the prayers of military chaplains, who offer what comfort they can to soldiers who may never see their homes again. The young king receives daily reports about casualties and tactical developments that require constant adjustments to overall strategy. Each dispatch that arrives from the front lines carries news of small victories and defeats that collectively determine whether his first major campaign will end in triumph or disaster. The pressure of making decisions that affect thousands of lives weighs heavily on shoulders that until recently carried only the burdens of preparation and anticipation. Supply convoys that attempt to reach the besieged fortress face constant harassment from enemy cavalry units that strike swiftly before disappearing into the broken terrain that favors mobility over strength. The narrow mountain passes that provide the only practical routes to the battlefield become killing grounds where ambush and counter-ambush create a deadly game of cat and mouse between opposing forces determined to control the flow of essential supplies. The siege itself evolves into a complex dance of attack and defense, as both sides employ increasingly sophisticated tactics to gain advantage. Undermining operations attempt to collapse sections of the fortress walls, while defenders counter with tunnels designed to intercept and destroy the attackers' excavations. The sound of digging continues day and night as the battle literally goes underground in a deadly competition between military engineers. The psychological warfare that accompanies the physical combat includes attempts to demoralize enemy forces through propaganda, threats, and displays of captured weapons and prisoners. Both sides try to convince their opponents that resistance is futile and that surrender offers the only hope for survival. These efforts at intimidation reveal as much about the fears of those making the threats as about their intended targets. The changing seasons add natural complications to military operations that must continue regardless of weather conditions. Autumn rains turn roads into rivers of mud that bog down supply wagons and make troop movements exhausting ordeals. The approaching winter threatens to freeze armies in place while testing the logistical systems that keep soldiers fed, clothed, and equipped for combat in harsh conditions that claim as many casualties as enemy weapons. The final assault on the fortress begins during a snowstorm that provides cover for attacking forces while hampering the defenders' ability to coordinate their response. Siege towers lumber forward through the swirling snow like ghostly mountains, while scaling ladders appear suddenly against walls where visibility drops to mere yards. The battle that follows will determine not just the fate of one strategic position, but the trajectory of the young king's entire reign and the future balance of power among the warring states. The fortress walls shake under the impact of massive stone projectiles hurled by enemy catapults positioned on distant hills. Defenders duck behind battlements as chunks of masonry explode in showers of deadly fragments that scatter across the courtyard, where reserve troops wait for orders to reinforce threatened sections. The young commander who holds this crucial position sends urgent messages to the capital, describing ammunition shortages and requesting immediate reinforcements before his garrison becomes too weakened to continue resistance. In the Qin capital, war councils convene throughout the night as military strategists debate whether to risk sending additional troops through mountain passes now controlled by enemy forces. The young king listens to arguments from generals who favor immediate action and advisors who counsel patience until spring weather improves conditions for large-scale troop movements. Maps covered with tactical assessments pile high on conference tables, where the fate of the kingdom hangs in the balance of strategic calculations. The royal workshops that produce military equipment work around the clock to meet demands that exceed anything in the kingdom's previous experience. Master craftsmen supervise apprentices who have never before attempted to create weapons on such an enormous scale. The air fills with smoke from countless forges, while the rhythmic hammering of metalworking creates a constant din that echoes through the capital's industrial districts. Children too young for military service carry water and supplies to exhausted workers who cannot pause in their critical production efforts. Recruitment officers travel through rural villages seeking additional soldiers to replace casualties and expand army sizes beyond any previous deployment. Young farmers abandon their plows to take up spears while their families watch with mixtures of pride and terror as sons march away toward battles that may claim their lives. The villages they leave behind struggle to maintain agricultural production with reduced workforces during seasons when every hand is needed for essential farming tasks. The supply trains that snake through mountain valleys carry more than weapons and food to support the expanding military operations. Medical supplies, replacement clothing, communication equipment, and specialized tools for siege warfare create massive logistical challenges that strain every aspect of the kingdom's transportation infrastructure. Wagon masters coordinate movements with military precision, while guards protect vulnerable convoys from enemy raiders who strike without warning from hidden positions. Enemy intelligence networks attempt to penetrate Qin's communication systems by intercepting messengers and bribing officials who might provide information about troop dispositions and strategic plans. Counterintelligence operations work to identify and eliminate these security threats while protecting sensitive information that could determine campaign outcomes. The shadowy world of spies and informants operates parallel to the open warfare that captures public attention and historical records. The civilian population adapts to wartime conditions that transform daily life throughout the kingdom. Markets that once offered luxury goods now focus on essential supplies needed for survival during extended military campaigns. Families hoard food and fuel, while artisans convert their skills to producing items needed for defense preparations. The normal rhythms of agricultural and commercial activity give way to emergency measures designed to sustain prolonged warfare. Religious ceremonies increasingly focus on prayers for military victory and protection of soldiers fighting far from home. Temples fill with worried families seeking divine intervention in battles whose outcomes will determine their future safety and prosperity. Priests offer sacrifices and conduct rituals designed to ensure favorable omens for continuing military operations, while providing spiritual comfort to communities under enormous stress. The fortress siege enters its third month as winter weather creates additional hardships for both attackers and defenders. Supplies become critically short on both sides, while medical facilities overflow with soldiers suffering from combat injuries, disease, and exposure to harsh conditions. The psychological strain of prolonged conflict begins to affect decision-making as exhausted commanders struggle to maintain discipline and morale among troops pushed beyond normal endurance limits. Diplomatic efforts to negotiate temporary truces fail repeatedly, as both sides demand concessions that the other finds unacceptable. The formal exchanges between enemy representatives reveal fundamental conflicts over territorial boundaries and political authority that cannot be resolved through compromise. These failed negotiations demonstrate that only complete military victory will end the escalating conflict that threatens to consume multiple kingdoms. The young king's first winter as ruler tests every aspect of his preparation for leadership responsibilities that extend far beyond military command. Economic management becomes crucial as war expenses strain royal treasuries while agricultural production declines due to labor shortages and disrupted transportation systems. Administrative challenges multiply as normal governmental functions must continue despite the overwhelming demands of military coordination and strategic planning. Regional governors report increasing difficulties maintaining civil order as local resources are redirected toward military support operations. Bandit activity increases along trade routes, where reduced security allows criminal organizations to exploit weakened law enforcement. Tax collection becomes problematic as communities struggle to meet financial obligations while supporting families whose breadwinners serve in distant military campaigns. The propaganda efforts designed to maintain public support for the war emphasize themes of national survival and ancestral honor that resonate with traditional values. Official proclamations describe enemy kingdoms as threats to cultural traditions and religious practices that define Qin identity. These appeals to patriotic sentiment help sustain civilian morale despite growing hardships and uncertainties about ultimate campaign outcomes. Military innovations developed during the siege campaign introduce new tactical concepts that will influence warfare throughout the region for generations. Engineers devise improved siege equipment, while field commanders experiment with formations and communication methods that increase battlefield effectiveness. These developments represent responses to immediate tactical challenges that will have lasting strategic implications for future military operations. The medical knowledge gained from treating unprecedented numbers of battlefield casualties advances understanding of trauma surgery and epidemic disease prevention. Field hospitals become laboratories where physicians develop new techniques for treating severe injuries while learning to manage medical supplies more efficiently. These innovations in military medicine will eventually benefit civilian healthcare systems throughout the kingdom. The economic impact of sustained military operations creates opportunities for some segments of society while imposing severe hardships on others. Weapons manufacturers and suppliers prosper while farmers and merchants struggle with labor shortages and disrupted markets. These economic dislocations reveal social tensions that will require careful management to prevent domestic unrest during vulnerable wartime periods. Intelligence reports arriving from other kingdoms indicate that neighboring rulers are carefully monitoring the conflict's progress while preparing their own military responses to whatever outcome emerges. The siege that began as a bilateral dispute between Qin and Han threatens to expand into a multi-kingdom war that could reshape the entire regional balance of power. Strategic planners must consider not only immediate tactical objectives, but also longer-term implications for relationships with other potential enemies and allies. The fortress commander sends increasingly desperate messages describing ammunition shortages and structural damage that weakens defensive capabilities. His garrison has suffered heavy casualties, while enemy forces continue to receive reinforcements and supplies through secure communication lines. The situation demands immediate relief operations or strategic withdrawal before the position becomes completely untenable. Relief columns organized in the capital face treacherous winter conditions and enemy harassment that slows progress toward the besieged fortress. Mountain passes blocked by snow and ice create additional obstacles while enemy cavalry units conduct hit-and-run attacks against supply trains. The race to reach the fortress before its defenses collapse completely becomes a test of logistical planning and tactical execution under extreme circumstances. The young king personally leads advanced elements of the relief force through terrain that challenges even experienced mountain fighters. His decision to share the dangers faced by common soldiers builds loyalty and demonstrates leadership qualities that will define his reign. The harsh conditions that test physical endurance also provide opportunities to evaluate the character and capabilities of military commanders who will shape future campaigns. Night marches through snow-covered passes require navigation skills and cold weather survival techniques that push human endurance to its limits. Soldiers wrap themselves in whatever warm clothing they can find while maintaining weapons and equipment in conditions that freeze metal and make normal maintenance procedures impossible. The determination to reach besieged comrades drives the relief force forward, despite hardships that would normally force strategic withdrawal. The final approach to the fortress requires coordinated timing between the relief force and defenders who must launch simultaneous attacks to break the siege. Signal fires burning on distant peaks carry coded messages that coordinate movements despite communication difficulties created by weather and enemy interference. The success of this complex operation depends on precise execution by forces separated by miles of hostile territory. The battle that breaks the siege unfolds in the pre-dawn darkness as attacking forces strike enemy positions from multiple directions simultaneously. The sound of combat echoes across snow-covered valleys, while defenders emerge from the fortress to join the assault on surprise besiegers. The coordination between relief forces and garrison troops demonstrates tactical sophistication that will become characteristic of Qin military operations. Victory in this first major campaign establishes the young king's reputation as a military commander capable of decisive action under pressure. The successful relief operation saves a strategically crucial position while demonstrating that Qin forces can project power effectively across difficult terrain and adverse weather conditions. These achievements provide foundations for more ambitious military enterprises that will eventually lead toward the unification of all China under a single ruler. The aftermath of the siege victory requires careful management of captured enemy soldiers, civilian populations in occupied territories, and allied forces who contributed to the successful campaign. Decisions about prisoner treatment and territorial administration will influence future relationships with defeated enemies and potential allies. The young king's choices during this crucial period establish precedents that will guide policy throughout his reign. The lessons learned from this first major military campaign influence strategic planning for future operations against remaining enemy kingdoms. Intelligence gathered about enemy capabilities, tactical innovations developed under combat conditions, and experience gained in coordinating large-scale military movements all contribute to institutional knowledge that strengthens Qin's military effectiveness. These accumulated advantages will prove decisive in subsequent campaigns that gradually eliminate rival kingdoms and create conditions for imperial unification. The captured enemy commanders provide valuable intelligence about the military capabilities and strategic intentions of rival kingdoms that have watched the siege with growing concern. During interrogations conducted in secure palace chambers, these prisoners reveal details about alliance negotiations and coordinated attack plans that threaten Qin from multiple directions simultaneously. The information they provide forces immediate revisions to defense strategies and diplomatic initiatives designed to prevent the formation of hostile coalitions. The victory celebrations that mark the successful campaign include elaborate ceremonies honoring fallen soldiers and rewarding exceptional service by surviving troops. The Great Hall fills with veterans displaying battle scars and carrying weapons taken from defeated enemies. Musicians play triumphant melodies, while dancers perform traditional routines that celebrate military achievement and divine favor. These festivities serve both to boost morale and demonstrate the kingdom's continued strength, despite the costs of prolonged warfare. The economic recovery from wartime expenses requires careful management of resources and implementation of policies designed to rebuild agricultural and commercial activities disrupted by military operations. Tax collectors work with provincial administrators to assess damage and adjust revenue expectations, while maintaining funding for ongoing defense preparations. The delicate balance between economic recovery and military readiness becomes a defining challenge for the young king's domestic policies. The diplomatic missions sent to neutral kingdoms carry proposals for trade agreements and military cooperation, designed to isolate remaining enemies while building coalitions favorable to Qin's expanding influence. Ambassadors skilled in negotiation and cultural sensitivity work to convince foreign rulers that alliance with Qin offers better prospects than resistance or neutrality. These diplomatic initiatives complement military preparations by creating political conditions that facilitate future conquest campaigns. The intelligence networks established during the siege campaign expand to provide comprehensive surveillance of enemy activities throughout the region. Spies operating undercover as merchants, scholars, and artisans gather information about troop movements, economic conditions, and political developments that might affect future military operations. The coordination center that processes this intelligence operates from hidden chambers, where analysts create detailed assessments of enemy capabilities and intentions. The military reforms implemented after the siege victory incorporate lessons learned about command structure, communication systems, and logistical support that proved crucial for success. Training programs emphasize coordination between different types of units, while equipment standardization improves battlefield effectiveness and supply management. These improvements transform Qin's military into an increasingly professional force capable of sustained operations across vast distances and diverse terrain. The young king's daily routine now includes regular briefings about developments throughout the known world, as his responsibilities expand beyond single kingdom governance toward regional leadership. Maps covering entire walls display information about political boundaries, trade routes, and military installations that define the strategic environment. The complexity of managing these expanded interests requires administrative innovations that will eventually serve as foundations for imperial government structures. The palace workshops that produced weapons and equipment during the siege now focus on creating the luxury items and ceremonial objects that demonstrate Qin's growing prosperity and cultural sophistication. Master craftsmen work with precious metals and rare materials to create artwork that rivals productions from any kingdom in the known world. These cultural achievements complement military victories by establishing Qin's reputation as a center of civilization, worthy of respect and emulation. The agricultural reforms introduced to increase food production for military consumption create lasting improvements in farming techniques and crop yields throughout the kingdom. New irrigation systems bring water to previously unproductive lands, while improved seed varieties increase harvests from existing fields. The surplus food production that results provides economic foundation for supporting larger populations and more extensive military forces than any rival kingdom can maintain. The education systems that train administrators and military officers expand to meet growing demands for qualified personnel to manage Qin's increasing territories and responsibilities. Schools established in major cities teach reading, writing, mathematics, and strategic thinking to young men selected for government service. These educational investments create a pool of talented individuals whose skills will prove essential for governing the unified empire that the king envisions creating. The legal reforms that establish consistent law enforcement throughout Qin's territories eliminate local variations in judicial procedures that had created confusion and inefficiency. Standardized legal codes ensure that crimes receive appropriate punishments, regardless of where they occur, while administrative procedures become uniform across different regions. These innovations in governance provide models that will eventually extend throughout a unified China under imperial authority. The transportation improvements that supported military logistics during the siege campaign evolve into comprehensive infrastructure projects connecting distant parts of the kingdom through improved roads and communication systems. Engineering teams construct bridges, repair mountain passes, and establish way stations that facilitate both commercial activity and government administration. The enhanced connectivity that results strengthens central authority while promoting economic development in previously isolated regions. The merchant associations that coordinated supply deliveries during the siege become permanent organizations that regulate trade and maintain quality standards for goods produced throughout the kingdom. These commercial networks create economic relationships that bind different regions together, while providing the royal government with reliable sources of revenue through taxation and trade fees. The prosperity that results from expanded commerce provides resources for continuing military expansion and administrative development. The religious institutions that offered spiritual support during wartime adapt to peacetime conditions by expanding their role in education and social services throughout the kingdom. Temples serve as centers for community gatherings, while priests provide guidance on moral and ethical questions that arise in daily life. The integration of religious authority with government administration creates social stability that supports the king's expanding political ambitions. The medical facilities established to treat battlefield casualties become permanent hospitals that serve civilian populations throughout the kingdom. Physicians trained in military medicine apply their skills to treating common diseases and injuries while developing new therapeutic techniques. The improved healthcare that results increases population growth and productivity while demonstrating the government's commitment to citizen welfare. The technological innovations developed for military purposes find applications in civilian industries that benefit from improved manufacturing techniques and quality control procedures. Metalworking advances lead to better farming tools and household items, while construction techniques developed for fortifications improve building quality throughout the kingdom. These technological improvements contribute to economic growth and cultural advancement that enhance Qin's regional influence. The cultural exchanges facilitated by diplomatic missions introduce new artistic styles, philosophical concepts, and scientific knowledge that enrich Qin's intellectual environment. Scholars and artists from distant kingdoms contribute their expertise to educational institutions and cultural projects, while learning about Qin's own achievements in various fields. These intellectual exchanges create a cosmopolitan atmosphere that attracts talented individuals from throughout the known world. The population movements that result from territorial expansion and economic development create new urban centers while transforming rural areas throughout the kingdom. Cities grow to accommodate increased commercial activity, while rural settlements develop specialized production capabilities that serve regional and kingdom-wide markets. The demographic changes that result require administrative adaptations and infrastructure improvements that test governmental capabilities. The seasonal festivals that celebrate agricultural cycles and commemorate important historical events become increasingly elaborate as the kingdom's prosperity grows. These celebrations provide opportunities for different social classes to interact while reinforcing shared cultural values and political loyalties. The pageantry and ceremony associated with these festivals demonstrate royal wealth and power while building popular support for continuing expansion policies. The marriage alliances negotiated with noble families from conquered territories create political bonds that help integrate new regions into the kingdom's administrative structure. These diplomatic marriages serve strategic purposes while providing opportunities for cultural exchange and the development of personal relationships that transcend political boundaries. The children born from these unions represent the next generation of leaders who will shape the unified empire's future development. The tribute systems established with defeated enemies create ongoing relationships that provide resources while acknowledging Qin's political supremacy. Regular payments of goods and services flow into the royal treasury, while tributary rulers maintain limited autonomy under Qin supervision. These arrangements provide models for imperial administration that will eventually govern relationships between the unified empire and its various regional components. The military academies that train officers for service throughout the kingdom develop standardized curricula that ensure consistent leadership quality across different units and campaigns. Students learn not only tactical and strategic principles, but also administrative skills necessary for governing conquered territories and managing civilian populations. The professional officer corps that graduates from these institutions becomes the backbone of imperial military organization. The communication networks that coordinate government activities across vast distances employ sophisticated systems of relay stations, coded messages, and backup procedures that ensure reliable information flow. Professional messengers trained in navigation and survival skills carry official correspondence through dangerous terrain while maintaining security protocols that protect sensitive information. The communication capabilities that result enable centralized control over territories larger than any previous Chinese kingdom. The construction projects that create monumental architecture throughout the kingdom demonstrate royal power while providing employment for skilled workers and laborers displaced by military campaigns. Palaces, temples, and administrative buildings incorporate advanced engineering techniques while displaying artistic achievements that rival any contemporary civilization. These architectural projects create lasting symbols of Qin's cultural accomplishments while serving practical governmental functions. The environmental management policies that regulate resource extraction and land use ensure sustainable development while meeting immediate economic and military needs. Forest conservation programs maintain timber supplies for construction and fuel, while agricultural regulations prevent soil depletion and maintain crop productivity. These long-term planning initiatives reflect governmental sophistication that extends beyond immediate tactical concerns toward comprehensive resource management. The social welfare programs that support families of soldiers killed or disabled in military service create safety nets that maintain popular support for continuing warfare. Veterans receive pensions and medical care, while their families receive assistance with housing and education expenses. These support systems demonstrate governmental commitment to citizen welfare, while ensuring continued recruitment for expanding military forces. The historical records that document governmental activities and military campaigns create institutional memory that informs future policy decisions and strategic planning. Court historians compile detailed accounts of important events while maintaining archives that preserve administrative precedents and legal decisions. The accumulated knowledge that results provides foundations for governmental continuity and institutional development that will serve imperial administration for centuries. The young king's transformation from inexperienced ruler to confident military commander and skilled administrator reflects the intensive education and practical experience gained through managing increasingly complex challenges. His daily routine now balances strategic planning sessions with administrative meetings and diplomatic negotiations that shape policy across multiple kingdoms. The leadership skills demonstrated through these varied responsibilities prepare him for the ultimate challenge of unifying all China under a single imperial authority. The network of alliances and tributary relationships that emerges from successful military campaigns creates the foundation for a regional empire that extends Qin's influence far beyond its original territorial boundaries. Trade agreements, military cooperation pacts, and diplomatic protocols establish frameworks for managing relationships with diverse kingdoms and tribal groups. These international arrangements provide the political infrastructure necessary for eventual imperial unification while maintaining stability during the transition period. The administrative innovations that enable effective governance of expanded territories create precedents for imperial organization that will influence Chinese political development for millennia. Standardized procedures, professional bureaucracies, and systematic record-keeping establish governmental capabilities that can manage populations and resources on unprecedented scales. The institutional foundations laid during this period of expansion provide the organizational structure necessary for governing a unified empire. The cultural synthesis that results from incorporating diverse populations and traditions into Qin's expanding domain creates a cosmopolitan civilization that combines the best elements from various regional cultures. Artistic traditions merge to create new aesthetic styles, while philosophical schools develop innovative approaches to governance and social organization. The cultural richness that emerges from this synthesis establishes intellectual foundations for imperial Chinese civilization. The economic integration that connects distant regions through trade networks and administrative systems creates prosperity that supports continued expansion while improving living standards throughout the kingdom. Specialized production centers develop competitive advantages while transportation improvements facilitate commerce across vast distances. The economic growth that results provides resources for military expansion while creating incentives for peaceful cooperation among different populations. The technological advances that result from military necessity and cultural exchange accelerate innovation in fields ranging from metallurgy to agriculture to construction. Knowledge sharing between different regions and kingdoms creates opportunities for rapid development, while competitive pressures encourage continuous improvement. The technological progress that results enhances both military capabilities and civilian living standards, while establishing foundations for imperial Chinese technological leadership. The diplomatic protocols that govern relationships with foreign kingdoms create frameworks for international relations that balance cooperation with competition while maintaining Qin's growing regional dominance. Professional diplomatic services develop expertise in negotiation, intelligence gathering, and cultural communication that facilitate peaceful expansion where possible, while preparing for military action when necessary. The diplomatic capabilities that result enable sophisticated international relations that complement military power with political influence. The military doctrine that evolves from accumulated campaign experience establishes strategic principles that will guide imperial Chinese military thinking for centuries. Combined arms tactics, logistics management, intelligence operations, and psychological warfare techniques create comprehensive approaches to conflict that maximize effectiveness while minimizing costs. The military innovations developed during this period establish foundations for the military supremacy that will enable complete unification of China under imperial rule. The transformation of Qin from a single kingdom into the dominant regional power demonstrates the effectiveness of combining military excellence with administrative sophistication, diplomatic skill, and cultural appeal. The young king, who inherited a strong but limited kingdom, has created the foundations for an empire that will reshape the entire known world. His achievements during this crucial period establish precedents and create capabilities that will enable the ultimate goal of unifying all China under a single imperial authority. The stage is now set for the final campaigns that will eliminate remaining rival kingdoms and create the unified empire that has been the ultimate objective throughout this period of expansion and development. The military, administrative, diplomatic, and cultural foundations established during these formative years provide all the necessary tools for achieving complete unification. The young king, who began as an untested ruler, has become the architect of imperial Chinese civilization, ready to complete the transformation that will create the first unified Chinese empire and establish patterns of governance that will influence human civilization for thousands of years to come. The winter victory transforms the young king's perspective on what true unification might require. As snow melts from the mountain passes and spring arrives across his expanded territories, he begins to envision something far more ambitious than traditional conquest. Walking through the palace gardens where cherry blossoms drift like pink snow, he contemplates not merely defeating remaining kingdoms, but creating something entirely new in human history. The morning audiences in the Hall of Supreme Harmony now include representatives from dozens of newly incorporated territories, each bringing their own customs, languages, and administrative traditions. The young king listens to reports delivered in accents he is still learning to understand, watching how different regional officials bow according to their local protocols. These daily encounters reveal the immense complexity of governing diverse populations who have never considered themselves part of a single political entity. In his private study chamber, surrounded by maps that now cover territories spanning half the known world, the king works late into the night, developing plans that go beyond military conquest towards systematic transformation. Candlelight flickers across scrolls covered with detailed proposals for standardizing everything from currency to writing systems to road construction techniques. His advisors arrive each morning to find their ruler already deep in calculations about population management, resource allocation, and communication networks that would connect regions separated by hundreds of miles of difficult terrain. The royal workshops expand their operations to meet demands that exceed anything in Chinese history. Master craftsmen work with materials gathered from across the known world, creating prototypes for standardized weights and measures that will replace the chaotic variety of local systems. In dimly lit foundries, metalworkers experiment with techniques for mass-producing identical coins that could serve as universal currency throughout a unified empire. The air fills with smoke from countless furnaces, while apprentices learn to create objects according to specifications that eliminate regional variations. The agricultural villages surrounding the capital adapt to new responsibilities as sources of food for populations far beyond their traditional boundaries. Farmers experiment with crop varieties brought from conquered territories, learning to cultivate plants that might thrive in different climates and soil conditions. Granaries expand to accommodate surplus production that must feed not only local populations, but also military forces deployed across vast distances and civilian administrators working in remote provinces. The merchant networks that developed during military campaigns evolve into sophisticated commercial systems connecting previously isolated regions through regular trade relationships. Caravans follow established routes that now extend from the northern steppes to the southern river valleys, carrying goods and information that bind distant territories together through economic interdependence. Market towns grow at strategic intervals along these trade corridors, creating rest stops where travelers from different kingdoms can exchange news and negotiate business deals. The education centers established for training military officers, expand their curricula to include civilian administration, engineering, and diplomatic skills needed for governing diverse populations. Students arrive from throughout the expanded territories, bringing their own languages and cultural traditions while learning standardized approaches to governance and law enforcement. The mixing of different regional backgrounds in these schools creates a new generation of administrators whose loyalty transcends traditional kingdom boundaries. The king's daily routine reflects his expanding responsibilities as he balances strategic planning with detailed oversight of implementation efforts across numerous provinces. Morning briefings include reports from regional governors describing local conditions and requesting guidance on issues ranging from tax collection to infrastructure maintenance. Afternoon sessions focus on coordinating policies between different territories, while evening meetings address long-term planning for projects that might take decades to complete. The communication systems that coordinate administrative activities across the expanding empire employ thousands of professional messengers who maintain regular contact between the capital and distant provinces. Relay stations positioned at day-long intervals provide fresh horses and secure lodging for official couriers, carrying encoded dispatches about everything from troop movements to harvest reports. The information networks that result enable centralized decision-making, despite distances that would have made coordination impossible under previous technological limitations. The legal reforms that establish consistent law enforcement throughout the territories require careful adaptation of local customs to universal principles of justice and administrative efficiency. Teams of scholars work to identify common elements in different regional legal traditions, while developing standardized procedures that can be applied fairly across diverse populations. The resulting legal codes balance respect for local customs with the practical requirements of unified governance. The construction projects that create infrastructure for the expanding empire employ engineering techniques that surpass anything previously attempted in the region. Road building crews carve pathways through mountain ranges, while bridge construction teams span rivers with permanent structures that can support heavy commercial traffic. The engineering challenges involved in connecting distant territories through reliable transportation networks push technological capabilities to new levels of sophistication. The religious institutions that serve diverse populations must accommodate different spiritual traditions while maintaining social stability and political unity. Temples incorporate architectural elements and ceremonial practices from various regional traditions, while priests learn to conduct services that respect different beliefs. The religious tolerance that results from these accommodations creates social harmony that supports political integration while allowing cultural diversity to enrich the expanding empire. The military forces that maintain security throughout the territories develop new organizational structures designed for governing civilian populations, rather than simply conquering enemy armies. Garrison commanders learn administrative skills, while soldiers receive training in civil engineering and law enforcement techniques needed for peacetime duties. The transformation of military units into multi-purpose organizations, capable of both defense and development activities, creates institutional capabilities for comprehensive territorial management. The intelligence networks that monitor activities throughout the empire expand beyond military surveillance to include economic reporting, social analysis, and cultural assessment that inform policy decisions about regional development and population management. Professional analysts study reports from agents throughout the territories, identifying trends and potential problems that require governmental attention. The comprehensive information systems that result enable proactive governance that anticipates and prevents problems, rather than simply reacting to crises. The diplomatic missions that maintain relationships with remaining independent kingdoms carry increasingly sophisticated proposals for voluntary integration rather than military conquest. Ambassadors skilled in cultural sensitivity and economic negotiation offer attractive terms for peaceful incorporation, while demonstrating the benefits that other territories have gained through cooperation with the expanding empire. These diplomatic initiatives create opportunities for growth through voluntary association, rather than costly military campaigns. The industrial development that supports imperial expansion creates specialized production centers throughout the territories, each focusing on particular goods that serve empire-wide markets. Iron foundries in mineral-rich regions supply tools and weapons throughout the territories, while textile centers produce standardized clothing for military and civilian use. The economic specialization that results increases overall productivity while creating interdependencies that strengthen political unity. The population movements that result from administrative assignments and economic opportunities create cosmopolitan communities throughout the empire, where people from different regional backgrounds work together on common projects. These mixed populations develop shared loyalties to imperial institutions while maintaining connections to their cultural origins. The social integration that results creates human foundations for political unity that transcend traditional ethnic and regional divisions. The technological innovations that emerge from combining knowledge from different regional traditions accelerate development in fields ranging from agriculture to medicine to manufacturing. Scholars and craftsmen from various backgrounds collaborate on projects that combine their specialized expertise while developing new techniques that surpass anything previously achieved. The technological progress that results enhances both military capabilities and civilian living standards while establishing foundations for continued innovation. The cultural synthesis that develops from incorporating diverse artistic and intellectual traditions creates a sophisticated imperial civilization that combines the best elements from various regional cultures. Artists develop new styles that blend different aesthetic approaches, while scholars create philosophical systems that integrate various schools of thought about governance and social organization. The cultural richness that emerges from this synthesis establishes intellectual foundations for imperial Chinese civilization. The seasonal festivals that celebrate imperial unity incorporate elements from various regional traditions, while creating new ceremonies that honor the achievements of unification. These celebrations provide opportunities for different populations to interact while reinforcing shared political loyalties and cultural values. The pageantry associated with imperial festivals demonstrates governmental prosperity and power while building popular support for continuing integration policies. The administrative procedures that govern daily activities throughout the empire establish consistent standards for everything from tax collection to judicial proceedings to public works management. Professional bureaucrats trained in standardized techniques ensure that governmental services meet uniform quality standards regardless of location or local conditions. The administrative consistency that results creates citizen confidence in imperial institutions, while enabling efficient resource management across vast territories. The economic policies that regulate commercial activities throughout the empire balance local autonomy with empire-wide coordination to maximize overall prosperity while maintaining political stability. Trade regulations ensure fair competition, while tax policies provide adequate government revenue without discouraging productive economic activity. The economic growth that results from these policies provides resources for continued expansion while improving living standards throughout the territories. The environmental management programs that coordinate resource extraction and land use across different regions ensure sustainable development while meeting immediate economic and military requirements. Forest conservation initiatives maintain timber supplies while agricultural policies prevent soil depletion and maintain crop productivity. The long-term planning that guides these programs demonstrates governmental sophistication that extends beyond immediate concerns toward comprehensive environmental stewardship. The social welfare systems that support citizens throughout the empire create safety nets that maintain popular loyalty while demonstrating governmental commitment to citizen welfare. Veterans receive pensions and medical care, while their families benefit from educational opportunities and housing assistance. The support systems that result ensure social stability while providing incentives for continued service to imperial institutions. The historical documentation that records governmental activities and policy decisions creates institutional memory that informs future planning while preserving knowledge of successful administrative techniques. Court historians compile comprehensive accounts of important developments while maintaining archives that preserve precedents and legal decisions. The accumulated knowledge that results provides foundations for governmental continuity and institutional development. As the fourth year of his reign approaches, the young king surveys an empire that extends far beyond anything his ancestors could have imagined possible. From his palace tower, he can see roads that lead toward territories where Qin's influence now reaches hundreds of miles in every direction. The administrative systems he has created govern populations that include dozens of different ethnic groups and cultural traditions, all bound together by shared institutions and common purposes. The military campaigns that once seemed like desperate struggles for survival have evolved into systematic expansion programs that incorporate new territories through combination of diplomatic negotiation and overwhelming demonstration of imperial capabilities. The professional armies that patrol frontier regions now serve primarily as symbols of imperial authority rather than active combat forces, their presence ensuring peaceful cooperation, while their absence would invite rebellion or foreign invasion. The economic integration that connects distant regions through trade networks and standardized commercial practices creates prosperity that benefits all imperial territories while providing resources for continued governmental development. Specialized production centers contribute their expertise to empire-wide markets, while transportation improvements facilitate commerce across distances that would have been impossible to manage under previous organizational systems. The cultural achievements that result from combining diverse regional traditions create intellectual and artistic accomplishments that surpass anything produced by individual kingdoms operating in isolation. Schools and libraries throughout the empire preserve and transmit knowledge while encouraging continued innovation and creative expression. The cultural sophistication that results establishes imperial Chinese civilization as a center of learning and artistic achievement. The administrative innovations that enable effective governance of diverse populations across vast territories create precedents for political organization that will influence human civilization for millennia. Professional bureaucracies, standardized procedures, and systematic record-keeping establish governmental capabilities that can manage resources and populations on previously unimaginable scales. Yet even as these achievements accumulate, the young emperor understands that his greatest challenges still lie ahead. The remaining independent kingdoms watch his expanding empire with growing alarm, recognizing that their own survival depends on either submitting to imperial authority or forming coalitions capable of resisting Qin's continued expansion. The final phase of unification will require not only military victory, but also the creation of governmental systems capable of governing all China under a single imperial authority. The winter planning sessions that occupy the emperor's attention focus increasingly on preparations for campaigns that will eliminate the last centers of independent political authority while establishing administrative structures for governing a completely unified Chinese empire. The strategic documents that emerge from these planning sessions outline military, diplomatic, and administrative initiatives that will reshape the entire known world according to imperial vision and capabilities. The spring campaigns that will begin within months represent the culmination of everything achieved during the previous years of expansion and development. The military forces that will participate in these final operations combine professional excellence with technological superiority and logistical capabilities that exceed anything available to potential enemies. The diplomatic initiatives that will accompany military operations offer attractive terms for peaceful surrender while demonstrating the futility of continued resistance. The administrative preparations for governing a unified empire include training programs for thousands of officials who will manage territories and populations throughout China under imperial authority. Legal codes that will apply throughout the empire balance consistency with flexibility, while enforcement mechanisms ensure compliance with imperial policies. The governmental systems being developed will create political unity while allowing cultural diversity to enrich the unified empire. The emperor, who began his reign as an untested young ruler, has become the architect of imperial Chinese civilization, ready to complete the transformation that will create the first unified Chinese empire. His achievements during the formative years of expansion have established all the foundations necessary for complete unification, while demonstrating governmental capabilities that will enable effective imperial administration for centuries to come. The final campaigns that will complete Chinese unification await only the arrival of favorable weather conditions and the completion of logistical preparations that will ensure overwhelming superiority over any possible resistance. The emperor's vision of a unified Chinese empire governed by efficient institutions and enriched by cultural diversity stands ready for implementation through the systematic application of military, diplomatic, and administrative capabilities developed during years of careful preparation. The teenage prince who entered the palace as heir to a single kingdom has transformed himself into the future emperor of all China, ready to achieve the ultimate goal that has guided every decision and shaped every policy throughout his remarkable rise to supreme authority. The unification of China under imperial rule represents not just military conquest, but the creation of a new form of human civilization that will influence world history for thousands of years. The dawn of 210 BCE brings with it an atmosphere of unprecedented anticipation throughout the empire. In the imperial capital, servants rise before the first light to prepare for ceremonies that will mark the completion of China's unification. The sound of bronze bells echoing through palace corridors carries a different quality this morning, their resonance seeming to announce the end of an era and the beginning of something entirely new in human history. The emperor himself stands in his private chambers, allowing attendants to dress him in robes that shimmer with golden thread depicting dragons that seem to move in the flickering candlelight. Each piece of ceremonial clothing carries symbolic meaning developed over centuries of tradition. But today, these ancient symbols take on new significance as they adorn the first ruler to claim authority over all Chinese territories. The Great Hall of Audiences fills with representatives from every corner of the now unified empire, their diverse clothing and customs creating a tapestry of human culture, unlike anything previously assembled in one location. Delegates from mountain kingdoms wear thick woolen robes decorated with silver ornaments, while ambassadors from river valleys arrive in silk garments, dyed in colours that reflect the prosperity of their agricultural regions. The mingling of different languages creates a gentle murmur that gradually quiets as the ceremony begins. The formal proclamation of universal empire unfolds according to protocols that blend ancient traditions with innovations necessary for governing territories spanning thousands of miles. Court musicians play melodies that incorporate musical traditions from throughout the unified realm, their instruments creating harmonies that represent the cultural synthesis now taking place under imperial authority. Incense burns in massive bronze vessels, sending clouds of fragrant smoke toward painted ceiling beams that seem to stretch infinitely upward. The emperor's voice carries clearly throughout the vast chamber as he announces administrative reforms that will transform daily life for millions of people throughout China. The standardization of writing systems means that scholars in distant provinces will finally be able to communicate directly with their counterparts in other regions. Merchants celebrate the introduction of uniform currency that will eliminate the confusion of dealing with dozens of different monetary systems. Farmers learn that new agricultural techniques developed in one region will now be shared throughout the empire. The imperial workshops that once focused on military equipment now redirect their efforts toward creating the infrastructure of unified governance. Master craftsmen work with rare materials to produce the thousands of official seals needed by administrators throughout the empire. Each seal must be carved with precise specifications that prevent forgery, while incorporating artistic elements that demonstrate imperial authority. The workshops fill with the sound of careful chiseling, as artisans create the tools that will enable centralized administration across vast distances. The construction projects that will connect different regions of the empire begin with massive mobilization of labor and resources that dwarfs anything previously attempted in human history. Engineering teams survey mountain ranges and river valleys to determine optimal routes for roads that will link the most distant territories with the imperial capital. The scale of these undertakings requires coordination between thousands of work crews while maintaining supply lines that stretch across hundreds of miles of challenging terrain. Village workshops throughout the empire adapt their production to serve imperial markets that suddenly extend far beyond traditional regional boundaries. Pottery makers learn to create vessels according to standardized specifications that will allow their products to compete throughout the unified realm. Textile workers master techniques for producing fabrics that meet imperial quality requirements while incorporating design elements from their local traditions. The transformation from local to imperial production creates opportunities for prosperity that were previously unimaginable. The communication networks that coordinate imperial administration employ relay systems that can transmit messages across the entire empire within weeks, rather than the months or years previously required. Professional couriers trained in navigation and survival techniques maintain regular schedules despite weather conditions and terrain difficulties that would defeat ordinary travelers. The information flow that results enables centralized decision-making while ensuring that local conditions receive appropriate consideration in policy development. The legal system that now governs all imperial territories requires careful integration of different regional traditions into comprehensive codes that can be applied fairly throughout diverse populations. Teams of legal scholars work to identify universal principles of justice while respecting local customs that do not conflict with imperial authority. The resulting legal framework balances consistency with flexibility while ensuring that all citizens receive equal protection under imperial law. The educational institutions that train administrators for imperial service expand their facilities and curricula to meet demands created by governing territories larger than any previous political entity. Students arrive from throughout the empire, bringing their own languages and cultural backgrounds, while learning standardized approaches to governance and administration. The mixing of different regional perspectives in these schools creates a cosmopolitan administrative class whose loyalty transcends traditional ethnic and territorial divisions. The agricultural innovations that feed the empire's growing population combine techniques developed in different climatic and soil conditions to maximize productivity throughout diverse regions. Farmers experiment with crop rotation systems that maintain soil fertility while increasing yields. Irrigation projects bring water to previously unproductive lands, while drainage systems prevent flooding that could destroy entire harvests. The agricultural surplus that results provides economic foundation for supporting larger urban populations and more extensive governmental bureaucracies. The military forces that maintain imperial security transform their organizational structures and training procedures to meet the requirements of governing civilian populations rather than conquering enemy territories. Garrison commanders learn administrative skills, while soldiers receive instruction in civil engineering and infrastructure maintenance. The military becomes a multi-purpose institution capable of both defense and development activities that contribute to imperial prosperity and stability. The trade networks that connect different regions of the empire create commercial relationships that bind distant territories together through economic interdependence. Merchants establish regular routes that carry specialized products from each region to markets throughout the imperial domain. The standardization of weights, measures, and currency eliminates barriers that previously hindered commerce, while transportation improvements reduce costs and increase reliability for long-distance trade. The cultural institutions that serve diverse populations throughout the empire develop new approaches to preserving regional traditions while promoting imperial unity. Libraries collect and preserve literature from different territories, while schools teach both local languages and standardized imperial Chinese. Artists develop new styles that blend regional aesthetic traditions with imperial themes, while maintaining the distinctive characteristics that enrich imperial cultural life. The religious practices that provide spiritual guidance for imperial populations adapt to accommodate different traditions while maintaining social harmony and political stability. Temples incorporate architectural elements from various regional styles, while priests learn to conduct ceremonies that respect diverse beliefs. The religious tolerance that results creates social cohesion that supports political integration, while allowing spiritual diversity to flourish under imperial protection. The technological innovations that emerge from combining knowledge and techniques from different regions accelerate development in fields ranging from metallurgy to medicine to transportation. Scholars and craftsmen collaborate on projects that integrate their specialized expertise while developing new capabilities that surpass anything previously achieved by individual kingdoms. The technological progress that results enhances both governmental capabilities and civilian living standards throughout the empire. The social welfare systems that support imperial citizens create comprehensive networks of assistance that demonstrate governmental commitment to citizen welfare while maintaining popular loyalty to imperial institutions. Veterans receive pensions and medical care, while their families benefit from educational opportunities and housing assistance. Widows and orphans receive support that enables them to maintain dignity and contribute to community life despite personal tragedies. The environmental management policies that coordinate resource extraction and land use across different regions ensure sustainable development while meeting immediate economic and administrative requirements. Forest conservation programs maintain timber supplies needed for construction and fuel, while agricultural regulations prevent soil depletion and maintain long-term productivity. The comprehensive approach to environmental stewardship demonstrates governmental sophistication that extends beyond immediate concerns toward long-term imperial sustainability. The seasonal festivals that celebrate imperial unity incorporate traditions from throughout the empire, while creating new ceremonies that honor the achievements of unification. These celebrations provide opportunities for different populations to interact, while reinforcing shared political loyalties and cultural values. The pageantry associated with imperial festivals demonstrates governmental prosperity and cultural sophistication, while building popular enthusiasm for imperial institutions. The population movements that result from administrative assignments and economic opportunities create diverse communities throughout the empire, where people from different backgrounds work together on common projects. These integrated populations develop shared loyalties to imperial institutions while maintaining connections to their cultural origins. The social mixing that results creates human foundations for political unity that transcend traditional ethnic and regional divisions. The historical documentation that records imperial achievements and administrative innovations creates comprehensive records that preserve knowledge of successful governmental techniques, while providing guidance for future policy development. Court historians compile detailed accounts of important developments, while maintaining archives that ensure institutional continuity and enable administrative improvement based on accumulated experience. The emperor's daily routine reflects the enormous scope of his responsibilities as he manages governmental activities that affect millions of people across territories larger than any previous ruler has ever governed. Morning audiences include reports from regional administrators describing local conditions and requesting guidance on issues ranging from flood control to tax collection to military deployment. Afternoon sessions focus on coordinating policies between different territories, while evening meetings address long-term planning for projects that will require decades to complete. The diplomatic relationships that the empire maintains with neighboring kingdoms and tribal groups beyond imperial borders create peaceful conditions that enable internal development while preventing foreign interference in imperial affairs. Professional diplomatic services negotiate trade agreements and mutual defense pacts, while gathering intelligence about potential threats to imperial security. The international relationships that result provide stability and prosperity that benefit all imperial territories. The economic policies that guide imperial development balance local autonomy with empire-wide coordination to maximize overall prosperity while maintaining political stability and social harmony. Tax systems provide adequate governmental revenue without discouraging productive economic activity, while trade regulations ensure fair competition and prevent exploitation. The economic growth that results provides resources for continued governmental development while improving living standards throughout imperial territories. The administrative procedures that govern daily activities throughout the empire establish consistent standards for everything from judicial proceedings to public works management to educational curricula. Professional bureaucrats trained in standardized techniques ensure that governmental services meet uniform quality standards regardless of location, while remaining sensitive to local conditions and customs. The administrative consistency that results creates citizen confidence in imperial institutions while enabling efficient resource management. The cultural achievements that result from imperial unity create intellectual and artistic accomplishments that surpass anything produced by individual kingdoms operating in isolation. Schools and libraries throughout the empire preserve and transmit knowledge while encouraging innovation and creative expression. The cultural sophistication that results establishes imperial Chinese civilization as a center of learning and artistic achievement that influences developments throughout the known world. As the emperor surveys his unified empire from the highest tower of his palace, he can see roads that lead toward territories where imperial authority now extends to the natural boundaries of Chinese civilization. The administrative systems he has created govern populations that include dozens of different ethnic groups and cultural traditions, all bound together by shared institutions and common purposes that transcend traditional divisions. The military campaigns that once required desperate struggles for survival have evolved into systematic peacekeeping operations that maintain order while allowing regional populations to prosper under imperial protection. The professional armies that patrol frontier regions serve primarily as symbols of imperial authority, while their disciplined presence ensures cooperative relationships between different communities and prevents conflicts that could disrupt imperial harmony. The economic integration that connects all regions through standardized commercial practices creates prosperity that benefits every imperial territory, while providing resources for continued governmental and cultural development. Specialized production centers contribute their expertise to empire-wide markets, while transportation improvements facilitate commerce across distances that previous generations could never have imagined managing effectively. The transformation that has taken place during the emperor's reign represents not merely the conquest of rival kingdoms, but the creation of an entirely new form of human civilization, based on unified governance, cultural synthesis, and economic integration. The Chinese empire that emerges from this transformation will influence world history for thousands of years, while establishing patterns of political organization and cultural development that continue to shape human society. The emperor who began as a young prince inheriting a single kingdom has become the architect of imperial Chinese civilization, successfully completing the unification that transforms separate warring states into a single political entity governed by efficient institutions and enriched by cultural diversity. The administrative innovations, technological advances, and cultural achievements that result from this unification create foundations for continued development that will benefit future generations throughout the imperial domain. The legacy of this remarkable transformation extends far beyond immediate political and military achievements to encompass fundamental changes in how human societies organize themselves and interact with each other. The imperial Chinese model of centralized governance, professional administration, and cultural integration becomes a template that influences political development throughout Asia and beyond, while demonstrating the possibilities for human cooperation on unprecedented scales. The unified Chinese empire that emerges from decades of careful planning and systematic implementation represents one of humanity's greatest organizational achievements, creating political stability and cultural prosperity that will endure for centuries while establishing China as one of the world's most influential civilizations. The emperor's vision of unified governance enriched by cultural diversity becomes reality through the patient application of administrative innovation, military excellence, and diplomatic skill that transforms the ancient dream of universal empire into historical fact. The gentle sounds of evening fill the imperial palace as servants light oil lamps throughout corridors where officials continue working late into the night on administrative tasks that will shape the daily lives of millions of imperial citizens. The soft glow of lamplight creates warm circles of activity in the gathering darkness, while the empire settles into peaceful routines that reflect the stability and prosperity achieved through successful unification. In villages and cities throughout the empire, families gather for evening meals where conversations increasingly reflect shared imperial identity rather than narrow regional loyalties. Children learn stories that celebrate imperial achievements, while grandparents share memories of the turbulent times before unification brought peace and prosperity to their communities. The transformation from local to imperial consciousness represents perhaps the most profound change resulting from the emperor's remarkable accomplishments. The unified Chinese empire stands as testament to the possibility of human cooperation, transcending traditional divisions of ethnicity, region, and custom, while creating institutions that serve the common good and enable individual prosperity within a framework of shared political loyalty and cultural appreciation. The morning air carries the scent of jasmine and wet earth as dawn breaks over the unified empire in 209 BCE. In countless villages throughout the realm, children wake to sounds that have become the rhythm of imperial life. The gentle clatter of wooden wheels on stone roads announces the arrival of official messengers, carrying edicts written in the standardized script that now connects every corner of the vast domain. In the imperial capital, the emperor's personal chambers fill with the soft rustle of silk as attendants prepare his daily wardrobe. Each garment must be arranged according to protocols that govern every moment of his existence, from the precise angle of his ceremonial hat to the specific patterns embroidered on his inner robes. The servants move with practiced silence, understanding that their sovereign's morning preparation sets the tone for governmental activities that will affect millions of lives before the sun reaches its peak. The palace kitchens come alive before dawn, as hundreds of cooks prepare the elaborate meals that fuel the imperial bureaucracy. Steam rises from enormous bronze cauldrons where rice cooks alongside delicacies gathered from every province of the empire. The head cook tastes each dish with the gravity of someone whose culinary decisions reflect the prosperity and cultural sophistication of unified Chinese civilization. Servants arrange the prepared foods on lacquered trays that gleam like mirrors in the flickering light of oil lamps. Throughout the capital city, shopkeepers open their stalls to display goods that arrive daily from the empire's most distant territories. Silk merchants from the southern provinces arrange bolts of fabric that shimmer with colours previously unknown in northern markets. Spice vendors from western regions fill the morning air with aromatic clouds that drift between buildings like invisible rivers of sensation. The mingling of different regional products creates commercial opportunities that were impossible during the era of competing kingdoms. The emperor's morning audience takes place in the Hall of Supreme Harmony, where representatives from throughout the empire gather to present reports and receive guidance about local administration. The vast chamber fills with the soft whisper of silk robes and the gentle percussion of ceremonial ornaments as hundreds of officials perform the synchronized bowing rituals that demonstrate their loyalty to imperial authority. Each delegate brings news from territories that span climates ranging from Arctic mountains to tropical river deltas. Regional governors describe the progress of construction projects that will eventually connect every major city with roads wide enough for military columns and commercial caravans. Engineers report on canal excavations that will bring irrigation water to previously barren lands, while enabling navigation between river systems separated by hundreds of miles. The scope of these infrastructure developments requires coordination between thousands of work crews operating simultaneously across the entire imperial domain. Provincial tax collectors present detailed accounts of revenue generation that reflects the growing prosperity enabled by political unification and standardized commercial practices. Agricultural surpluses from fertile valleys support urban populations engaged in specialized crafts and administrative activities. Mining operations in mountainous regions provide metals needed for tools, weapons, and currency throughout the empire. The economic integration that results creates wealth that exceeds anything achieved by individual kingdoms operating independently. Military commanders describe peacekeeping activities that maintain order while allowing regional populations to develop their own cultural traditions under imperial protection. Garrison forces patrol frontier boundaries, where diplomatic agreements prevent conflicts with neighboring kingdoms and tribal groups. The professional armies that once conquered rival territories now serve as symbols of imperial authority while contributing to local prosperity through construction projects and agricultural development initiatives. The emperor listens to each report with attention that reflects his understanding of how local conditions affect empire-wide stability and prosperity. His questions reveal comprehensive knowledge of geographical features, cultural characteristics, and economic potential throughout territories that stretch beyond the horizons visible from any single location. The administrative sophistication required to govern such diverse populations demonstrates the evolution from traditional monarchy towards systematic imperial management. Court scholars present the results of educational programs that train administrators for service throughout the imperial bureaucracy. Students arrive from every province, bringing their own languages and cultural backgrounds while learning standardized approaches to law enforcement, tax collection, and infrastructure maintenance. The mixing of different regional perspectives creates a cosmopolitan administrative class whose professional competence transcends traditional ethnic and territorial divisions. Diplomatic envoys report on negotiations with foreign kingdoms that seek trade agreements and mutual defense arrangements with the powerful Chinese Empire. Professional diplomatic services maintain peaceful relationships that enable internal development while gathering intelligence about potential threats to imperial security. The international recognition that results from successful unification enhances China's influence throughout the known world, while providing opportunities for cultural and technological exchange. Agricultural specialists describe innovations that increase food production throughout diverse climatic regions of the empire. Farmers experiment with crop varieties that thrive in different soil conditions, while irrigation engineers develop water management systems that maximize agricultural productivity. The food surpluses that result support growing urban populations engaged in manufacturing, administration, and cultural activities that enrich imperial civilization. The afternoon hours bring different responsibilities, as the emperor reviews detailed plans for projects that will require years or decades to complete. Architectural drawings spread across massive tables show proposed palace complexes, ceremonial centers, and administrative buildings that will accommodate the expanding requirements of imperial governance. Each structure must incorporate engineering innovations while displaying artistic achievement that demonstrates the cultural sophistication of unified Chinese civilization. Construction supervisors describe progress on defensive fortifications that will protect northern frontiers from nomadic invasions while serving as symbols of imperial permanence and strength. The massive earthworks and stone barriers require coordination between thousands of workers using techniques that push engineering capabilities to unprecedented levels. The fortification projects demonstrate imperial commitment to protecting civilian populations while establishing boundaries that define Chinese territorial claims. Legal scholars present proposals for judicial reforms that will ensure consistent law enforcement throughout territories where different regional traditions have governed disputes and criminal proceedings for centuries. The standardization of legal procedures must balance imperial consistency with respect for local customs that do not conflict with overall governmental objectives. The comprehensive legal framework that emerges provides equal protection for all citizens while maintaining cultural diversity within unified political structure. Religious authorities describe ceremonial adaptations that accommodate different spiritual traditions while promoting imperial unity and social harmony. Temples throughout the empire incorporate architectural elements and ritual practices from various regional backgrounds while maintaining shared themes that reinforce political loyalty and cultural cooperation. The religious tolerance that results creates social stability that supports economic development and administrative effectiveness. The emperor's evening routine includes private study sessions where he reviews historical texts and philosophical treatises that inform his understanding of effective governance and long-term imperial strategy. Candlelight flickers across scrolls containing wisdom from ancient sages, while maps and administrative reports provide contemporary information about current challenges and opportunities. The intellectual preparation that guides imperial decision-making reflects the complexity of governing territories and populations larger than any previous ruler has ever managed. Palace workshops continue their activities throughout the evening hours as craftsmen work to meet demands created by imperial administrative requirements. Master artisans create ceremonial objects and official seals, while apprentices learn techniques for producing standardized goods that serve governmental functions throughout the empire. The quality control that governs these productions ensures that imperial authority is represented consistently regardless of location or local conditions. The communication networks that connect different regions of the empire operate continuously, as professional messengers maintain regular schedules despite darkness and weather conditions that would challenge ordinary travelers. Relay stations positioned at strategic intervals provide fresh horses and secure lodging for couriers, carrying encoded dispatches about everything from harvest reports to security assessments. The information systems that result enable centralized coordination while ensuring that local concerns receive appropriate governmental attention. Medical facilities throughout the empire provide healthcare services that combine traditional regional healing practices with innovations developed through systematic study and experimentation. Physicians trained in imperial medical schools apply standardized diagnostic techniques while respecting local therapeutic traditions that prove effective for treating common ailments. The healthcare improvements that result increase population growth and productivity, while demonstrating governmental commitment to citizen welfare. The technological innovations that emerge from combining knowledge and techniques from different regions accelerate development in manufacturing, agriculture, and construction throughout the imperial domain. Scholars and craftsmen collaborate on projects that integrate specialized expertise while developing capabilities that surpass anything previously achieved by individual kingdoms. The technological progress that results enhances both governmental effectiveness and civilian living standards. Industrial centers throughout the empire specialize in producing particular goods that serve empire-wide markets, while maintaining quality standards that establish Chinese products as superior to competing items from foreign sources. Metalworking facilities create tools and weapons using techniques that remain trade secrets carefully guarded by master craftsmen. Textile production centers weave fabrics that combine beauty with durability, while incorporating design elements that reflect regional cultural traditions. The transportation systems that connect distant territories enable commerce and communication on scales that previous generations could never have imagined possible. Road construction crews work continuously to maintain and expand networks that facilitate both governmental administration and private commercial activity. Bridge building projects span rivers and gorges using engineering techniques that demonstrate imperial capabilities while providing practical benefits for regional populations. Village life throughout the empire reflects the transformation from local to imperial consciousness as communities adapt their daily routines to serve broader purposes while maintaining their distinctive cultural characteristics. Farmers coordinate planting schedules with imperial agricultural advisors, while continuing traditional celebrations that mark seasonal changes. Craftsmen produce goods for empire-wide markets, while preserving techniques passed down through generations of family workshops. Educational institutions in major cities throughout the empire attract students from distant provinces who come to learn administrative skills and cultural knowledge needed for governmental service. The mixing of different backgrounds in these schools creates intellectual environments that encourage innovation while building personal relationships that strengthen imperial unity. Graduates return to their home regions with enhanced capabilities and broader perspectives that benefit local communities while serving imperial objectives. The cultural synthesis that results from imperial unification creates artistic and intellectual achievements that combine the best elements from various regional traditions while developing new forms of expression that reflect the scope and diversity of Chinese civilization. Poets compose verses that celebrate imperial themes while incorporating imagery from different geographical regions. Painters develop techniques that blend various aesthetic approaches while creating works that appeal to audiences throughout the empire. Seasonal festivals throughout the empire incorporate traditions from different regions while creating new ceremonies that celebrate imperial unity and cultural diversity. These celebrations provide opportunities for communities to interact with neighbors from different backgrounds while reinforcing shared political loyalties and social values. The pageantry associated with imperial festivals demonstrates governmental prosperity while building popular enthusiasm for continued unification efforts. The social welfare systems that support citizens throughout the empire create comprehensive assistance networks that demonstrate imperial commitment to citizen welfare while maintaining popular loyalty to governmental institutions. Veterans receive medical care and financial support, while their families benefit from educational opportunities and housing assistance. Community support programs help widows, orphans, and disabled individuals maintain dignity while contributing to local economic activity. Environmental management policies coordinate resource extraction and land use across different regions to ensure sustainable development while meeting immediate economic requirements. Forest conservation programs maintain timber supplies needed for construction, while agricultural regulations prevent soil depletion that could threaten long-term food security. The comprehensive approach to environmental stewardship demonstrates governmental sophistication that considers long-term imperial sustainability alongside immediate practical needs. The intelligence networks that monitor conditions throughout the empire provide information about potential problems before they become serious threats, while identifying opportunities for beneficial policy initiatives. Professional analysts study reports from agents in every major city while maintaining surveillance of frontier regions where foreign activities might affect imperial security. The information systems that result enable proactive governance that anticipates challenges rather than simply reacting to crises. Population movements resulting from administrative assignments and economic opportunities create diverse communities where people from different backgrounds collaborate on projects that benefit entire regions while maintaining connections to their cultural origins. These integrated populations develop shared loyalties to imperial institutions while preserving traditions that enrich overall cultural life. The social mixing that results strengthens political unity while celebrating human diversity. Trade networks connecting different regions create commercial relationships that bind territories together through economic interdependence while enabling specialization that increases overall productivity. Merchants establish regular routes that carry unique products from each region to markets throughout the imperial domain, while standardized currency and measurement systems eliminate barriers that previously hindered commerce. The economic growth that results provides resources for continued governmental development. Historical documentation preserves records of imperial achievements while providing guidance for future policy development based on accumulated administrative experience. Court historians compile comprehensive accounts of successful innovations while maintaining archives that ensure institutional continuity despite personnel changes. The knowledge preservation that results enables continuous improvement in governmental effectiveness while creating cultural memory that strengthens imperial identity. The emperor's transformation from provincial ruler to imperial sovereign reflects the evolution of Chinese civilization from competing kingdoms toward unified empire, governed by institutions that serve common purposes while respecting regional diversity. His daily responsibilities encompass decisions that affect millions of lives, while his long-term planning addresses challenges that will influence imperial development for generations. The leadership capabilities demonstrated through managing such complex responsibilities establish precedents for imperial governance that will influence Chinese political development for centuries. The unified Chinese empire represents humanity's most ambitious organizational achievement to that point in history, creating political stability and cultural prosperity through systematic application of administrative innovation, military excellence, and diplomatic skill. The imperial model of centralized governance enriched by cultural diversity becomes a template that influences political development throughout the ancient world, while demonstrating possibilities for human cooperation on unprecedented scales. The administrative systems developed for governing diverse populations across vast territories create institutional foundations that enable effective management of resources and human activities on scales that exceed anything previously attempted. Professional bureaucracies trained in standardized techniques ensure consistent governmental services, while legal frameworks provide equal protection for all citizens regardless of background or location. The governmental sophistication that results establishes China as a center of political innovation and administrative excellence. As night settles over the empire, oil lamps flicker to life in windows throughout countless communities, where families gather for evening meals that increasingly reflect imperial rather than purely local traditions. Children learn stories that celebrate the achievements of unification, while adults discuss opportunities created by participation in empire-wide economic and cultural activities. The transformation from regional to imperial consciousness represents perhaps the most profound change resulting from successful political unification. The emperor's vision of unified Chinese civilization, governed by efficient institutions and enriched by cultural diversity, has become historical reality through patient application of strategic planning, administrative innovation, and diplomatic skill that transforms ancient dreams of universal empire into practical governance systems. The legacy of this transformation will influence world history for millennia, while establishing patterns of political organization that continue to shape human society. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the empire rests under starlit skies that stretch from mountain peaks to ocean shores, the profound achievement of Chinese unification becomes most apparent. A single governmental system now coordinates activities across territories that encompass every type of landscape and climate, while populations speaking different languages and practicing various customs share common political loyalty and cultural appreciation. The transformation from competing kingdoms to unified empire represents one of humanity's greatest organizational accomplishments, creating stability and prosperity that will endure for centuries, while establishing China as one of the world's most influential civilizations. The gentle rhythm of imperial life continues as servants throughout the palace prepare for another day of governmental activities that will touch the lives of millions of citizens across the vast Chinese empire. The soft sounds of morning preparation blend with distant temple bells that mark the passage of time according to ancient traditions now shared throughout the unified realm. The remarkable journey from warring states to imperial unity stands complete, having created governmental institutions and cultural achievements that will influence human civilization for thousands of years to come. The morning rituals that define imperial existence begin before the first hint of dawn touches the eastern horizon. In chambers decorated with jade screens depicting mythical phoenixes, The emperor awakens to the gentle sound of silk curtains being drawn by servants who have served the palace for decades. Their movements follow choreographed precision, developed over years of attending to the most powerful individual in the known world. The emperor's sleeping mat, woven from the finest silk produced in southern workshops, bears the warmth of a body that carries the weight of governing millions of souls across territories, stretching beyond any single person's ability to comprehend. The bathing ceremony that follows represents far more than simple cleanliness. Servants heat water in bronze vessels using wood that arrives daily from imperial forests hundreds of miles away. The temperature must achieve perfect warmth, neither too hot nor insufficiently heated, tested by senior attendants whose lives depend on maintaining these precise standards. Rare herbs gathered from mountain slopes throughout the empire infuse the water with fragrances that speak of territorial unity and natural abundance. The emperor's skin, touched only by hands that have undergone ritual purification, experiences the empire's resources translated into personal care that symbolizes the realm's prosperity. The selection of daily garments involves decisions that reflect imperial authority while accommodating the practical requirements of governance. Each robe tells a story through its colors, patterns, and materials that arrive from workshops scattered across the unified territories. The silk threads shimmer with dyes extracted from insects, plants, and minerals that represent the empire's diverse geography. Golden dragons embroidered by master craftsmen seem to move in the candlelight, their mythical power woven into fabric that transforms mere clothing into symbols of cosmic authority. The emperor's private chambers connect to corridors where the empire's business begins each day, before most citizens have opened their eyes. Officials arrive carrying bamboo scrolls that contain reports from provincial administrators describing conditions in territories where different languages and customs blend under imperial governance. The soft percussion of wooden sandals on polished stone creates rhythmic patterns as bureaucrats move through hallways designed to inspire awe while facilitating efficient administration. The morning meal reflects the empire's agricultural diversity through dishes prepared from ingredients that travel vast distances to reach the imperial kitchen. Rice from southern paddies mingles with preserved vegetables from northern farms, while dried fish from coastal regions adds flavors that speak of maritime prosperity. Each dish must be tasted by designated officials whose responsibility includes ensuring that the emperor's food represents both safety and the abundance that unification has brought to previously isolated regions. The first formal audience of the day takes place in halls where architectural innovations blend practical acoustics with artistic achievement. Hundreds of officials arrange themselves according to rank and regional origin, their varied clothing creating visual representations of the empire's cultural diversity. The emperor's voice carries clearly to the furthest corners of the vast space as he addresses concerns that range from flood control in distant provinces to trade negotiations with foreign kingdoms beyond imperial borders. Provincial reports arrive through messenger networks that operate with mechanical precision, despite distances that would challenge the most experienced travelers. Couriers riding horses bred specifically for speed and endurance carry encoded dispatches across mountain passes and river valleys, where previous generations struggled to maintain communication within single kingdoms. The information that flows into the imperial capital enables centralized decision-making, while ensuring that local conditions receive appropriate governmental attention. Tax collection reports reveal the economic transformation that unification has achieved throughout territories where different monetary systems once created barriers to commerce. Standardized currency now facilitates trade between regions separated by hundreds of miles, while uniform weights and measures eliminate confusion that previously hindered commercial development. The revenue that flows into imperial treasuries supports infrastructure projects and administrative activities that benefit every corner of the unified realm. Military dispatches describe peacekeeping activities that maintain order while allowing regional populations to develop their cultural traditions under imperial protection. Professional armies patrol frontier boundaries, where diplomatic agreements prevent conflicts with neighboring kingdoms, while garrison forces contribute to local prosperity through construction projects and agricultural development initiatives. The transformation from conquest to protection reflects the evolution from military expansion to imperial administration. Engineering reports detail progress on construction projects that will permanently transform the empire's physical infrastructure. Road-building crews carve pathways through mountain ranges, while bridge construction teams span rivers with permanent structures capable of supporting heavy commercial traffic. Canal excavations will eventually connect river systems, separated by vast distances, while defensive fortifications establish boundaries that define Chinese territorial claims for generations to come. Legal administrators present cases that require imperial judgment about disputes arising between citizens from different regional backgrounds. The standardization of legal procedures must balance consistency with respect for local customs while ensuring equal protection for all imperial subjects. These judicial decisions establish precedents that will guide law enforcement throughout territories where different traditions have governed human relationships for centuries. Agricultural advisors describe innovations that increase food production throughout the empire's diverse climatic regions. Farmers experiment with crop varieties that thrive in different soil conditions, while irrigation engineers develop water management systems that maximize productivity. The surplus food that results supports growing urban populations engaged in manufacturing, administration, and cultural activities that enrich imperial civilization. The emperor's midday routine includes private consultation with scholars whose research informs long-term imperial policy development. Maps spread across enormous tables display territories that encompass every type of landscape and climate, while population surveys reveal demographic patterns that influence administrative planning. The intellectual preparation required for governing such vast and diverse territories demonstrates the evolution from traditional monarchy towards systematic imperial management. Diplomatic briefings address relationships with foreign kingdoms that seek trade agreements and mutual defense arrangements with the powerful Chinese empire. Professional diplomatic services gather intelligence about potential threats while maintaining peaceful relationships that enable internal development. The international recognition that results from successful unification enhances China's influence throughout the known world, while providing opportunities for beneficial cultural and technological exchange. Afternoon audiences include presentations by regional specialists who describe unique characteristics and requirements of different imperial territories. Mountain provinces face challenges different from river valleys, while coastal regions have needs distinct from interior plains. The administrative sophistication required to address such diversity while maintaining unified governance reflects the complexity of imperial responsibilities that extend far beyond traditional royal duties. Construction supervisors report on progress involving projects that will require decades to complete while serving as permanent symbols of imperial achievement. Architectural innovations blend practical functionality with artistic beauty, while engineering techniques push technological capabilities to unprecedented levels. These massive undertakings demonstrate imperial commitment to creating lasting monuments while providing practical benefits for regional populations. Religious authorities describe ceremonial adaptations that accommodate different spiritual traditions while promoting imperial unity and social harmony. Temples throughout the empire incorporate various architectural styles and ritual practices, while maintaining shared themes that reinforce political loyalty and cultural cooperation. The religious tolerance that results creates social stability that supports economic development and administrative effectiveness. Industrial specialists present reports about manufacturing developments that establish Chinese products as superior to competing items from foreign sources. Metalworking facilities create tools and weapons using techniques that remain carefully guarded trade secrets, while textile centers weave fabrics that combine durability with beauty. The quality standards that govern imperial production ensure consistent excellence while supporting empire-wide commerce. Evening responsibilities include reviewing detailed plans for future initiatives that will shape imperial development for generations. Educational programs train administrators for service throughout the imperial bureaucracy, while infrastructure projects connect distant territories through improved transportation and communication networks. The long-term planning that guides these efforts reflects governmental sophistication that extends far beyond immediate concerns toward comprehensive imperial sustainability. The emperor's private study sessions involve examining historical texts and philosophical treatises that inform understanding of effective governance and strategic imperial planning. Ancient wisdom combines with contemporary reports to guide decisions that affect millions of lives while influencing the future direction of Chinese civilization. The intellectual foundation that supports imperial leadership demonstrates the evolution from personal rule toward institutional governance. Palace workshops continue their activities throughout evening hours as craftsmen meet demands created by imperial administrative requirements. Master artisans create ceremonial objects and official seals, while apprentices learn techniques for producing standardized goods that represent imperial authority consistently throughout the realm. The quality control that governs these productions ensures that governmental functions operate effectively regardless of location. Communication networks maintain continuous operation as professional messengers carry information between the capital and distant provinces, despite darkness and challenging weather conditions. Relay stations provide fresh horses and secure lodging, while encoded dispatches carry news about everything from harvest assessments to security evaluations. The information systems that result enable coordinated governance while ensuring responsive attention to local circumstances. Medical facilities throughout the empire provide healthcare services that combine traditional healing practices with innovations developed through systematic study and experimentation. Physicians apply standardized diagnostic techniques while respecting effective local therapeutic traditions. The healthcare improvements that result demonstrate governmental commitment to citizen welfare while supporting population growth and economic productivity. Technological innovations emerge from combining knowledge and techniques from different regions while accelerating development in manufacturing, agriculture, and construction throughout the imperial domain. Collaborative projects integrate specialized expertise while developing capabilities that surpass anything previously achieved by individual kingdoms. The technological progress that results enhances both governmental effectiveness and civilian living standards. Village communities throughout the empire adapt their daily routines to serve broader imperial purposes while maintaining distinctive cultural characteristics. Local festivals incorporate imperial themes while preserving traditional celebrations that mark seasonal changes and community milestones. The cultural synthesis that results creates artistic and intellectual achievements that reflect both regional diversity and imperial unity. Transportation systems enable commerce and communication on scales that previous generations could never have envisioned as practical possibilities. Maintenance crews work continuously to expand networks that serve both governmental administration and private commercial activity. The connectivity that results strengthens imperial unity while promoting economic development in previously isolated regions. Educational institutions attract students from distant provinces who learn administrative skills and cultural knowledge needed for governmental service. The intellectual environments that result encourage innovation while building personal relationships that strengthen imperial cohesion. Graduates return to home regions with enhanced capabilities and broader perspectives that benefit local communities while serving imperial objectives. Social welfare systems create comprehensive assistance networks that demonstrate imperial commitment to citizen welfare while maintaining popular loyalty to governmental institutions. Support programs help veterans, widows, orphans, and disabled individuals maintain dignity while contributing to community economic activity. The safety nets that result ensure social stability while providing incentives for continued service to imperial causes. Environmental management policies coordinate resource extraction and land use across different regions to ensure sustainable development while meeting immediate economic requirements. Conservation programs maintain essential supplies, while regulations prevent depletion that could threaten long-term prosperity. The stewardship approaches that result demonstrate governmental sophistication that balances present needs with future sustainability. Intelligence networks monitor conditions throughout the empire while providing early warning about potential problems before they become serious threats. Professional analysis identifies opportunities for beneficial policy initiatives, while surveillance systems maintain security along frontier regions. The information capabilities that result enable proactive governance that anticipates challenges rather than merely reacting to crises. Population movements create diverse communities where people from different backgrounds collaborate on regional projects while maintaining connections to their cultural origins. The social integration that results develops shared loyalties to imperial institutions while preserving traditions that enrich overall cultural life. These demographic changes strengthen political unity while celebrating human diversity within unified governmental structure. Trade networks create commercial relationships that bind territories together through economic interdependence while enabling specialization that increases overall productivity. Standardized systems eliminate barriers that previously hindered commerce, while regular transportation schedules ensure reliable delivery of goods and services. The economic growth that results provides resources for continued governmental development and cultural achievement. Historical documentation preserves records of imperial innovations while providing guidance for future policy development based on accumulated administrative experience. Comprehensive accounts ensure institutional continuity, while archives create cultural memory that strengthens imperial identity across generations. The knowledge preservation that results enables continuous improvement in governmental effectiveness. The emperor's personal transformation from regional ruler to imperial sovereign reflects the broader evolution of Chinese civilization, from competing kingdoms toward unified empire, governed by institutions that serve common purposes while respecting cultural diversity. Daily responsibilities encompass decisions affecting millions of lives, while long-term planning addresses challenges that will influence imperial development for centuries. Knight settles over an empire where unified governance has created unprecedented stability and prosperity through systematic application of administrative innovation, diplomatic skill, and military excellence. The imperial model demonstrates possibilities for human cooperation on scales that exceed anything previously achieved, while establishing governmental frameworks that will influence world history for millennia. In countless communities throughout the realm, families gather for evening meals that increasingly reflect imperial rather than purely regional traditions. Children learn stories celebrating unification achievements, while adults discuss opportunities created by participation in empire-wide activities. The consciousness transformation, from local to imperial identity, represents perhaps the most profound change resulting from successful political unification. The emperor's vision of Chinese civilization, governed by efficient institutions and enriched by cultural diversity, has become historical reality through patient application of strategic planning and administrative excellence. This legacy will influence human development long after the immediate participants have joined their ancestors, while establishing organizational patterns that continue shaping civilized society. The remarkable journey from competing kingdoms to unified empire stands as testament to human capability for creating cooperative institutions that transcend traditional divisions while serving common purposes. The governmental sophistication and cultural achievements that result establish China as a center of political innovation and administrative excellence that influences development throughout the ancient world. As dawn approaches once again over the unified empire, the gentle rhythms of imperial administration prepare to begin another cycle of activities that coordinate human effort across vast territories and diverse populations. The transformation from warring states to imperial unity represents one of humanity's greatest organizational accomplishments, creating foundations for continued development that will benefit countless future generations, while establishing precedents for political cooperation that transcend ethnic and regional boundaries. The Imperial Palace awakens to sounds that have become the heartbeat of unified Chinese civilization, where governmental institutions serve millions of citizens while cultural achievements reflect the creative potential unleashed through political cooperation and administrative excellence. The legacy of this transformation continues to influence human understanding of what becomes possible when diverse populations unite under effective leadership, committed to serving common purposes, while celebrating the cultural diversity that enriches civilized life. The emperor's final morning begins like countless others, yet something in the autumn air of 209 BCE carries an unusual stillness. In his private chambers, servants notice their sovereign's breathing has grown labored during the night, though he insists on maintaining his daily routine with characteristic determination. The silk robes that once hung perfectly on his frame now seem oversized, draping loosely over shoulders that have borne the weight of empire for decades. The morning audience proceeds with ceremonial precision, though keen observers detect subtle changes in the emperor's voice as he addresses provincial reports. His questions remain sharp and insightful, but the pauses between responses grow longer, as if each word requires careful consideration before being spoken. Officials from distant territories present their usual assessments of agricultural production, infrastructure progress, and regional stability, unaware they are witnessing history's pivot point. Court physicians move discreetly through palace corridors, their faces carefully composed to avoid revealing their growing concern about symptoms that resist their most sophisticated treatments. The emperor's condition manifests in ways that challenge medical understanding developed through centuries of healing practice. His skin takes on a pale cast that contrasts starkly with the vibrant colors of his ceremonial clothing, while his hands occasionally tremble despite his efforts to maintain imperial dignity. The administrative machinery of empire continues functioning with mechanical precision, even as its central figure weakens visibly throughout the morning hours. Scribes copy official documents, while military commanders coordinate troop deployments along distant frontiers. The bureaucratic systems created during decades of expansion operate independently of any single individual, testament to the institutional sophistication that has replaced personal rule with systematic governance. Secret meetings convene in palace chambers where senior advisors debate succession procedures that have never been tested under actual circumstances. The emperor's eldest son has shown little interest in administrative responsibilities, preferring philosophical studies to the practical demands of governance. Younger princes demonstrate varying degrees of capability, but none has received the comprehensive preparation that transformed their father from provincial ruler to imperial sovereign. Regional governors receive coded messages, instructing them to maintain normal operations while preparing for potential political transitions that could affect local stability. The communication networks that connect every corner of the empire carry information about military readiness and civilian morale, ensuring that provincial administrators understand their responsibilities during uncertain times. Border garrisons increase vigilance against foreign kingdoms that might exploit any perception of imperial weakness. The emperor's afternoon routine includes private audiences with military commanders who discuss contingency plans for maintaining imperial unity during succession periods. Maps spread across conference tables display strategic positions where loyal forces can respond quickly to potential rebellions or foreign invasions. The professional armies that once conquered rival territories now serve as guardians of institutional continuity, their loyalty tested through years of peacekeeping service. Palace workshops continue producing the ceremonial objects and official seals needed for governmental functions throughout the empire, though craftsmen work with subdued energy that reflects the somber atmosphere pervading imperial precincts. Master artisans understand that their creations might soon serve new leadership while representing unchanging imperial authority. The quality standards that govern their production remain constant despite uncertainty about future patronage and artistic direction. Economic advisors present reports about harvest assessments and commercial activity that will sustain the empire through winter months, regardless of political developments. Tax collection proceeds normally, while trade networks maintain regular schedules that connect distant regions through economic interdependence. The prosperity that unification has created provides stability that transcends individual leadership while supporting institutions capable of governing diverse populations. Religious authorities conduct ceremonies seeking divine guidance about imperial succession, while maintaining spiritual services that comfort populations throughout the realm. Temples fill with citizens offering prayers for their sovereign's recovery and the continued stability that has brought unprecedented peace and prosperity to previously war-torn territories. The religious tolerance that characterizes imperial policy creates social harmony that supports political continuity during transitional periods. Intelligence networks monitor activities in neighboring kingdoms, where foreign rulers watch Chinese developments with careful attention to potential opportunities for territorial expansion or diplomatic advantage. Professional analysts assess threats while maintaining surveillance systems that provide early warning about hostile activities. The security capabilities developed during imperial expansion now focus on protecting institutional achievements from external interference. The emperor's evening routine includes reviewing historical precedents for imperial succession while consulting legal scholars about procedures that will ensure governmental continuity. Ancient texts provide guidance about transferring authority, while contemporary reports describe current conditions that must be considered in succession planning. The intellectual foundation that supports imperial decision-making now addresses questions that will determine the empire's future direction. Medical consultations reveal symptoms that resist traditional treatments while defying contemporary understanding of human physiology. Court physicians apply techniques learned through decades of treating imperial families, while consulting texts that describe similar conditions affecting previous rulers. Their recommendations balance hope for recovery with realistic assessment of prognosis that influences succession timing and political preparation. Palace guards increase security measures that protect imperial precincts while maintaining normal appearances that prevent public alarm about their sovereign's condition. Professional soldiers trained in both military tactics and diplomatic protocol ensure that foreign ambassadors and domestic officials receive appropriate treatment while sensitive information remains confidential. The security systems that protect imperial authority now face their greatest test. Administrative procedures continue operating through institutional momentum that enables governmental functions to proceed despite reduced personal oversight from imperial authority. Professional bureaucrats trained in standardized techniques maintain essential services while preparing for potential changes in leadership priorities and policy direction. The governmental sophistication developed during imperial expansion demonstrates its resilience during periods of uncertainty. Construction projects throughout the empire continue according to established schedules, while supervisors adapt their plans to accommodate potential changes in imperial patronage and resource allocation. Engineering teams working on roads, canals, and fortifications understand that their efforts serve long-term imperial interests regardless of individual leadership changes. The infrastructure development that connects distant territories provides permanent benefits that transcend political transitions. Cultural institutions throughout the empire maintain educational programs and artistic activities that preserve regional traditions while promoting imperial unity through shared intellectual and creative experiences. Schools continue training administrators, while libraries preserve knowledge that informs policy development and cultural advancement. The cultural synthesis achieved through unification creates foundations for continued civilization, regardless of succession outcomes. Trade networks adapt their operations to accommodate potential political changes, while maintaining commercial relationships that bind different regions together through economic interdependence. Merchant associations coordinate with governmental authorities about policies that might affect commerce, while preparing contingency plans for various succession scenarios. The economic integration achieved through imperial unification provide stability that supports continued prosperity. Environmental management policies continue coordinating resource extraction and land use across different regions according to long-term sustainability principles that balance immediate needs with future requirements. Conservation programs maintain essential supplies, while regulatory systems prevent depletion that could threaten imperial prosperity. The stewardship approaches developed during expansion demonstrate their importance during transitional periods. Population movements throughout the empire reflect normal patterns of administrative assignment and economic opportunity, while governmental authorities monitor demographic changes that might affect regional stability during succession periods. Communities that include people from diverse backgrounds maintain their cooperative relationships through shared loyalty to imperial institutions rather than dependence on individual leadership. The emperor's final hours unfold in chambers where imperial authority gradually transfers to institutional systems created during decades of administrative innovation and governmental development. His breathing becomes increasingly shallow while servants maintain vigil according to protocols that honor imperial dignity during life's final transition. The palace falls silent, except for essential activities as news of impending change spreads through official channels. Court historians begin documenting the end of an era that transformed Chinese civilization from competing kingdoms into unified empire governed by sophisticated institutions capable of managing vast territories and diverse populations. Their records will preserve knowledge of administrative achievements and cultural developments that established foundations for continued imperial governance under future leadership. Military commanders coordinate with civilian administrators about maintaining stability during the succession period, while ensuring that governmental functions continue operating according to established procedures. The professional competence developed through imperial service now faces its ultimate test, as institutions must function independently of the personal authority that created them. As dawn breaks over the unified empire one final time during his reign, the emperor's breathing grows still in chambers that have witnessed the transformation of human civilization itself. The gentle sounds of morning preparation continue throughout the palace as servants light oil lamps and prepare for governmental activities that will now proceed under new leadership, guided by the institutional foundations he created. The remarkable journey from warring states to imperial unity stands complete, having established governmental systems and cultural achievements that will endure for centuries, proving that visionary leadership combined with systematic innovation can transform ancient dreams of universal harmony into enduring historical reality that continues shaping human society long after its architect has joined the eternal silence of the ancestors.